Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is parallel in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 21, Memories. There were stars in the night sky and moonlight shining through the windows of the Hokage's office. Sarutobi Hiruzen was finishing up for the night. He was never in any hurry to go home, where he was alone, where his wife no longer lived. She died at the hands of whoever released the Kyuubi. Throughout it all, Hiruzen refused to accept anyone's opinion that he was biased against Naruto. He remembered his previous teammates, Koharu and Himura, trying to have Naruto locked up, using the death of his wife as a bargaining chip. They wanted him chakra blocked and contained from a young age, something that Danzo fully agreed with and Hiruzen wouldn't hear of. Instead, he allowed Naruto to run free, to live on his own, with as little interference as possible. Maybe he gave the boy too much freedom, but that wasn't a bad thing. The boy turned out fine, if not a little loud. Laying the quill down on his desk, Hiruzen took in the time. It was nearing midnight. Way past time for him to head home. Deciding the work he was doing could wait, he began to tuck everything away when he heard a knock at his office door. "Come in." Anumbu, one of his most trusted, stepped forward. "Lord Hokage, we have some news for you. Lord Danzo was found near death. He's been transported to the hospital." Hiruzen froze. "Near death? He's still alive?" "Barely, sir." Throwing the Hokage robe on, Hiruzen grabbed the hat and hurried out the door. The hospital wasn't far from the Hokage Tower, and he was far from a feeble old man. Two of his most trusted Umbu followed close behind, watching the streets warily. Once at the entrance of the hospital, two members of his council, and once his teammates, Koharu and Himura, waited for him. Himura bowed. "Hiruzen, I'm afraid the news is grim. And disturbing," Koharu added. "He was found bleeding out, arm seemingly cut from his shoulder." Hiruzen turned to his Umbu. "Bor, go to Danzo's office. No one leaves, no one touches anything. Goat, wake up Inoichi and Shikaku, have them meet Bor there." The two men nodded before flickering out of sight. He turned back to the others. "I'll go to him, now." He didn't wait for them to answer, instead, he pushed past them. An older nurse, one who Hiruzen was sure had been there nearly as long as he had, met him at the front desk. "Lord Hokage, Lord Danzo is in the emergency room. He's lost so much blood that his body is shutting down. I'm afraid his chances aren't good, sir." The three elders took a seat in the waiting room. They had nothing to do but wait. So, Shikaku walked into the infamous office after being escorted to an opening he never knew existed. "This is Danzo's hidden office?" "Cozy." Several Umbu turned to look at him, none of them had the Konoha marking on their masks. From his position hunkered down on the floor behind the desk, Inoichi waved him over. "Our Umbu caught these ones attempting to break into this safe." He tilted his head toward the intricate lock system. "One shot only. If you get the code wrong, it explodes. Don't happen to remember it, do you?" Smirking, Shikaku knelt down beside him. 22-65-18, if I remember correctly. The man had an eidetic memory. Of course he remembered. There was a satisfying click after Inoichi typed in the code. Immediately, the unmarked Umbu began to shift around uneasily. With each file and scroll the men pulled out, the deeper a hole was dug under Danzo. Inoichi looked at Shikaku. "Just to make sure, are you seeing what I'm seeing?" The man was eerily silent, holding a folder and slowly stroking his beard. They had spent years digging up dirt on Danzo, just to have it practically handed to them on a silver platter? It was all too easy. First scrolls were being dropped where they could easily be found. Now Danzo is critically injured, near death, and his loyal agents are attempting to clear out his office? It was too neat. Too wrapped up in a shiny bow. Why? He caught Inoichi's pale eyes in a gaze. It's too easy. His dark eyes glanced around the room. Yeah. The blond man stood up, stretching his legs. Here's where he was found. He pointed toward a huge pool of blood that had soaked into the hardwood floor and rug laid underneath the desk. Another strange thing, as if we don't have enough of them, is these cages. They had to house some kind of bird, based on the feathers inside. Inoichi pulled one of the feathers out with his long fingers. How's your bird knowledge? With a shrug, Shikaka walked over to the cages. He took in the long black feather currently held in Inoichi's hand. The only black birds we have that big here are crows. Why would Danzo have crows in cages? Inoichi pondered, spinning the feather between his fingers. Was he using them as messengers or something? Be a good way to disguise them. Crows are part of the wildlife here in Konoha. Taking in the unmarked umbu in the room, Shikaka wondered how much they actually knew. He also wondered how much authority he and Inoichi had in the room. There were 2 umbu he'd seen before. 2 he knew were loyal to the Hokage. Boar, Goat, can I ask you to detain these unmarked umbu? Does that need to be cleared by Lord Hokage first? No, sir, Boar answered. We can detain, but we cannot question without his authorization. Shikaka nodded. Okay. Let's get them somewhere they can't destroy any evidence, then. We will let people we know are loyal to Lord Hokage do the actual work in here. The 2 umbu nodded before doing as they were told. They didn't have to listen to him. The truth was, Boar and Goat were doing more than they actually should have been. They corralled them, chakra blocked them, and all without being told to. Shikaka wondered how much freedom Sandaime actually gave them. Well, that was easy. Inoichi's voice betrayed how much he didn't trust the situation. Too easy. Lord Hokage. A tall, thin man with wire-framed glasses entered the waiting room. He was wearing a doctor's coat with streaks and spots of blood decorating the front and down the arms. The man looked haggard, his hair a mess from being stuck inside of the hat they wore in emergency. I'm sorry to inform you of this. Lord Danzo couldn't be saved. Hiruzen looked like he'd been punched in the gut. How did he die? Extreme blood loss, sir. By the time he was brought here, most of his organs had shut down and he had 0 brain activity. Sadly, we were fighting a losing battle from the start. The man waited, not sure if he was about to be yelled at or praised. Placing a firm hand on the man's shoulder, Hiruzen gave him a sad smile. Thank you for trying. I'm sure you did everything you could. He watched as the medic bowed before disappearing into the hallway again. Turning around to Koharu and Himura, the man looked older, sadder. I lost a dear friend today. He started for the front doors of the hospital. I'll be going back to the office. No chance of sleep tonight. With his head in Itaka's lap, Sasuke slept on the couch. The other 2 kids were sent to bed, but Kakashi was sure they weren't sleeping. He was reasonably sure Sakura's footsteps could be heard heading toward Naruto's bedroom about 20 minutes ago. With effort, Itaki had stayed awake. He gently combed his fingers through Sasuke's hair, willing his eyes to stay open. It was so quiet where they were, Itaka felt like he had all the time in the world, but he didn't. As Kakashi took a seat in the chair, Itaka finally took his eyes off his baby brother. I can't stay. We both know that. Yes, well, Kakashi kicked his feet up on the coffee table, doesn't mean you actually want to go. He motioned to Sasuke. I'm very sure that boy would like to keep his big brother around. I can only go so far with teaching him the Sharingan. You would be a much better teacher. How did he get it? Itaka's fingers were still combing through Sasuke's hair. What did he see? Kakashi gave him a sad smile. He saw Naruto almost dying. The Sharingan manifested to help him save Naruto in time. The memory still sent a pang through his heart. It happened so fast he doesn't remember it hurting. There was a time in Kakashi's life he would have put a rakery through Itaka's chest and never thought twice about it. Not now. Not after knowing what he knows. He used to see a murderer when he looked at the teen. Now he sees a broken kid who was manipulated by a terrible man. A teen who is sick, who showed up at his door bleeding and unconscious and sick. Itake, why would your crows bring you here? Where were you? There is something you should know, Kakashi. He looked out the window, still seeing the crows clustered together in the yard, sitting on the banisters, taking over the trees. Danzo had made me a deal. He would take care of Sasuke and let me check in on him. I did that by sending my crows to watch him. The man had never interfered before, but he decided to capture 2 of them this time. He is a disgusting man. He paused, taking a deep breath. Kakashi sat forward in the chair, putting his feet back on the floor. Itachi. Did you kill him? He had Shisui's eye. He had father's eye in his arm. They were implanted in him. It was horrific. Yes, I relieved the world of his evil. He looked back down at his brother. I don't regret it. Huffing out a laugh, Kakashi leaned back again. Didn't expect you to. What did you mean he had the eye in his arm? How would that work? Before, he'd gotten to Sasuke after he'd killed Danzo. There wasn't time to talk to his former student before Obito whisked him, and Danzo's body, away. Kakashi had never seen the body. I'm assuming he used Hashirama's cells. The Sharingan eyes were implanted in his arm. He didn't get a chance to use them. My genjutsu is very strong. Yes, Kakashi rolled his eyes. I remember. When they were on an Umbu team together, he'd challenged Itachi to put him under a genjutsu, see if Kakashi was strong enough to dispel it on his own. He wasn't. He got a reminder of that strength when he fought Itachi and Kisame outside of Konoha. I'm sure it's even stronger now. He watched Itachi fight a yawn. I know you feel like you can't stay. We can fight that out in the morning. For now, get some sleep. Stay close to Sasuke. He grabbed a couple of blankets from the closet in the hallway, throwing them over the two Uchiha on his couch. Good night, Itachi. There was an odd look on Itachi's face like he was confused, but it left when he looked down at his brother. Thank you, Kakashi. Morning came far too soon for Kakashi. The sky was still a dreary gray, the sun barely peeking over the hills. Kakashi could feel his bed moving, shifting under the weight of someone climbing on his mattress. The two bodies, one on each side of him, curled under the blanket. He cracked an eye open, seeing pink hair cuddling into his side. On the other side he saw blonde hair. What are you two doing? Kakashi's voice was still husky with sleep. Are you okay? Naruto propped his chin on Kakashi's chest, big, blue eyes looking up at him through a fringe of bright blonde hair. What's gonna happen with Sasuke's brother? Is he still bad? He was hurt when he came here. Sakura chimed in. He's pretty sick, sensei. She peeked over at Naruto. We heard you two talking last night. He killed someone here. Seeing that he wasn't going to see sleep anytime soon, Kakashi slid himself into a sitting position, careful not to disturb his kids too much. The man he killed was Danzo. He's a terrible man who has done terrible things. Death was too good for him, honestly. His kids were sitting on their knees, watching him intently. Danzo had a hand in what Itachi did. Here's a good lesson for you kids, not everything is as it seems. Look underneath the underneath. Naruto punctuated it with a nod. So what's underneath the underneath of Itachi? Kakashi let out a sigh. A scared kid who was manipulated into doing something terrible. There was a lot placed on his shoulders that he, as a child, could not control. He was put in the middle of a conflict between his clan and his village, a conflict he had no part of. And, in the middle of all that, he put his baby brother above everything else, even himself. They were quiet as the two kids sat there, thinking. Sakura bit her lip, looking down at her hands. Kakashi reached out and brushed a piece of hair from her face. At this age in the previous timeline, Sakura was still so innocent. Still so insecure. Still chasing after Sasuke as if he was the piece of her life she was missing. Now, he saw a little girl who was slowly gaining her confidence. So much was changing in this timeline. Kakashi would use his second chance for good, to make their previous lives worth the sacrifice. He realized as he sat there looking at these two kids, that they never reached adulthood. He realized that Naruto had died on his 17th birthday. Had he ever even celebrated his birthday? Quietly, as Sakura worried the blanket in her hands, she whispered, Itachi is kinda cute. Kakashi barked out a laugh. Naruto wrinkled his nose, considering it. If you're into that, I guess. I mean, he looks like Sasuke, kind of. Or, I guess Sasuke looks like him. Whatever. He looked up at Kakashi. I look like my mom. Who does Sasuke and Itachi look like? Their mother, Mikoto. She was beautiful. He pat Naruto on the cheek. And, she was a good friend of your mother. Really? Naruto clung to any information about his parents with wide eyes. With a smile, Kakashi thought back. His favorite memory of Kushina and Mikoto was of them sitting at the tea shop, gossiping. Itachi sat beside them, small and innocent, playing with a green dinosaur. He can still hear the two of them giggling. They always planned on you two being friends. There were footsteps in the hallway before the door peeked open. Black fringe of hair was seen before the pale skin of his third kid. Sasuke's dark eyes took in his teammates on the bed before slowly walking inside. He climbed on the bed, sitting behind Naruto. It wasn't long before Itachi peeked in the room, waiting for permission. When Kakashi motioned him in, he gingerly sat on the foot of the bed. Hey! Hey! Naruto turned around, bouncing on his knees. Did you know our moms were friends? Sasuke's eyes drew down, head tilting to the side. Yeah, Sensei said so. It's true. Itachi's voice was quiet, husky with sleep. They were best friends. Mom was very sad when Kushina died. We went to see you in the hospital, Naruto, after. Dark eyes flickered to Kakashi's then back down at his hands, like he wasn't sure he should have talked. Through the blanket, Kakashi nudged Itachi with his toe, getting the teen's attention. I'm on a mission for Naruto to learn everything he can about his parents. He pat Naruto on the shoulder. Anything you know, he would love to hear. Turning around, Naruto planted his bottom on the bed, right by Kakashi's hip. He watched Itachi intently, waiting for more information. He's, eager to learn. A slight smirk showed on Itachi's face. Kakashi hadn't seen that since their Umbu days when Shisui would join them and tease the poor boy relentlessly. Your mother was loud, full of personality. Always smiling and laughing. She was a tomboy, I remember. Always had dirt on her knees, even when she was wearing the dress. When she found out she was pregnant, she told Mom first. I was there that day. She was, extra loud, practically squealing. Itachi shook his head. Mom was pregnant with Sasuke and Kushina asked her a lot of questions. I didn't want to hear the things they were talking about, so I went outside. Yeah, Kushina didn't really know the meaning of tact. Kakashi laughed. She just said whatever was on her mind. There were times, Kakashi could remember, when Kushina would have Obito's face as red as a tomato. She'd ask about Rin, or tell him how adorable he was. It never failed to make Obito uncomfortable and embarrassed. Minato had brought it up, told her to behave, but Kushina never listened. Naruto sat there happily listening. I wish I could have met her. She sounds awesome. Itachi tilted his head, opening his mouth to say something, but closing it again. What? The teen looked at Kakashi, a question in his eyes. Why Kakashi had never thought of it before baffled him. He could show Naruto exactly what his mother and father were like. He could put Naruto in a genjutsu, let him walk around them, hear them, see them. Why didn't he think of that before? What Itachi was asking was for permission, to be trusted. Go ahead, Itachi. It was a leap of faith, but Itachi surely wouldn't hurt him. Not now. Naruto's head whipped between them, clearly confused. What? What are you two talking about? Naruto, Itachi began, would you like to see my memories of your mother? I can put you in a genjutsu and show them to you. You won't be able to talk to her, just watch. Instantly, Naruto was up on his knees again, begging Itachi to show him. To everyone else, it will only be a moment. To you, it will last as long as the memory does. The blonde nodded. Okay, hold still. First, all Naruto saw was black. Then, as if turning a light on, the memory began. A woman with dark hair, belly round and full, sat at a small table. Next to her was a small Itachi daintily eating rice with his chopsticks. Across the table sat a woman with long red hair, the color of rubies in the sunlight. That was his mother, the woman who was in the photo album Kakashi had stolen for him. She was beautiful in the pictures, but in this memory she was ethereal. I am absolutely famished. No one told me pregnancy would make me eat this much, you know. Kushina snatched another dango from the plate between her and the other woman. You didn't warn me, Mikoto. A gentle laugh left Mikoto. Oh, Kushina, you wouldn't have listened anyway. She placed her hand over her protruding stomach. He keeps kicking today. Child Itaka looked up at his mother. Give me your hand, Itaka. She placed it on her stomach. Can you feel your baby brother? That is adorable. Kushina smiled. Oh, maybe Minato and I can have another baby. Maybe a girl. She propped her chin on her hand. Wouldn't that be amazing? A little redhead running around. The world is not ready for another Uzumaki Kushina. Mikoto laughed. Not with that temper. The memory shifted, faded away like sand in the wind. A room appeared, resembling a traditional living room. Mikoto sat on the couch, Itaka perched beside her. He was reading a book to her when the door flew open. Mikoto. Kushina came rushing into the living room. Mikoto. I'm pregnant. She squealed so loud Itaka covered his ears. Can you believe it? I'm going to be a mother, you know. They embraced at the living room entrance, both women close to tears. I'm so happy for you, Kushina. Mikoto leaned back, grabbing Kushina's face in her hands. Oh, I can't wait. Hopefully our little ones will be friends. Oh, me too, you know. That memory faded away, giving room for another. Itaka stood beside his mother, who had Sasuke in a sling around her neck, staring into a plate glass window. There were rows of small beds, each holding a newborn baby. With tears streaming down her face, Mikoto cried as she looked at the only blonde in the line. Kushina, I'm so sorry. She put her hand on the glass. I wish there was more I could do, but they won't let me. I'm sorry, little Naruto. When the memory faded to black and Itaka stopped the genjutsu, Naruto was crying. The boy collapsed on Kakashi's lap while the man soothingly rubbed his back. Itaka looked sad, also. He met Kakashi's eyes, apprehensive. I only showed him a couple. You did great, Itaka. Thank you. With his free hand, Kakashi carded through Naruto's hair, scratching the scalp. It was another thing that seemed to calm the boy. Everyone was silent as the sobbing subsided and Naruto's breathing returned to normal. Sakura had left the room for a moment but returned with tissues. When the blonde sat back up, wiping his eyes on the tissues Sakura shoved in his hand, everyone was staring at him. So, was it better than just the pictures? Naruto nodded, fresh tears threatening to break through. Come here, kid. Kakashi pulled Naruto against his side, the boy curling in a ball. Through sniffles, Naruto looked at Sakura. I got to see baby Sasuke. He used to have chubby cheeks. What? Really? Sakura bounced on her knees. Oh, that sounds adorable. Sasuke scoffed. Oh, get over yourself. Babies are adorable. She looked at Itaka. Can you show me? Please. Itaka's eyes flashed red as Sakura went still. Then she blinked, slapping her palms to her cheeks. Oh my, Sasuke. You were so cute. Shut up. He looked away, his cheeks tinted pink. From his position curled under Kakashi's arm, Naruto gave a little giggle. You too, moron. Naruto extended a leg and kicked Sasuke sideways. Sasuke retaliated by grabbing Naruto's ankle and pulling, causing the blonde to go sliding down the bed. Idiot. Naruto jumped on top of Sasuke, sending them both crashing to the floor. Itaka looked from the jumble of boys to Kakashi. Oh, they do that all the time, Itaka. They'll be fine. Sakura nodded in agreement. I think we should talk about what you're going to do, now. I can't stay. The boys quit fighting on the floor, both looking up at Itaka. I'm a rogue ninja. I defected. There's no coming back from that. It's not that easy. Sasuke looked close to tears, or anger, or both, at Itaka's words. He kept glancing between his brother and his sensei, unsure of what to say or what to do. As if looking for a security blanket, Sasuke grabbed Naruto's hand, holding tight. It didn't escape Itaka's notice, but the teen said nothing. Instead, just looked down at his own hands. Kakashi ran a hand through his hair. This was a tricky situation. As much as he would love to, he can't just welcome Itaka into the fold. They need to be careful, especially with Sandaime watching Kakashi as close as he is. With Danzo, hopefully, dead, It opened up the possibility of Itaka sneaking and using his crows, but even that couldn't be a constant. And, if anyone happened upon the house when they weren't expecting it, Itaka could be caught. No, this wasn't going to be easy to figure out. Sasuke deserved to have his brother in his life, and Itaka deserved to know how his baby brother was doing. How to work it out was another story. Of course, after the Chunin exams, if Kakashi allowed Sandaime to be killed, Lady Tsunade might be more receptive to the idea of Itaka being manipulated. She was always against allowing children as young as Itaka was to be in Umbu. She felt their psyche was too fragile at that age. Kakashi agreed wholeheartedly, especially as he was much the same age when he joined the Umbu. It did damage a child extensively. Tsunade's bias would go a long way in her entertaining the idea of pardoning Itaka. Give it some time, Itaka. It might all work out, yet. At Kakashi's words, Itaka gave him a confused look. Just, trust me. In the meantime, any information you are willing to share about the Akatsuki would be appreciated. Itaka nodded. Yes, I can do that. Why did they cut off his arm? Inoichi wondered out loud as he sat in Shikaku's office. And why would his Umbu hide it? Shikaku shrugged, continuing to look through what little the rogue Umbu would let slip. I've informed Ibiki. I'm sure he will enjoy getting the information from them. Inoichi snorted. They both knew how excited Ibiki could get while doing his job. The only glaring misstep they have taken is mentioning two others are out of the village. No sanctioned missions came from him in the past few months, meaning this was a personal trip. How many on the outside did he have under his thumb? Probably anyone with power and money. The blond man was flicking the end of a folder with his thumbnail. Daimyos, politicians, lords, mercenaries, average bad men all around, really. You're a ton of help, my old friend. Shikaku drawled, rolling his eyes. There has to be something in all these files. Or, maybe, more files somewhere? Maybe we can find who kept leaving those scrolls for our people to find. Sitting up, Inoichi shrugged. That's a lot of maybes. Especially for you, old friend. He sighed, looking at the stacks of folders covering Shikaku's desk. We should really get some help. Don't want to disturb Kakashi, though. Why not? Taking a seat at his desk, Shikaku picked up one of the files and flicked through it. His kids have a mission. Inoichi shook his head. You saw that huge sword Sakura has, right? The Kubikuri Basho. Shikaku nodded. Well, Lord Hokage wants to send it back to Kiri. Before you say it, I agree it's a stupid idea. Sakura didn't want to let it go, so the man issued a challenge. If she can wield it properly by the end of the week, then she can keep it. Dark eyes bored into Inoichi. Shikaku looked surprised. You're kidding me, right? When Inoichi just stared back, Shikaku shook his head. Huh. Well, Sandaime has a fight on his hands. From what Shikamaru tells me, Sakura has some untapped power inside of her. Near-perfect chakra control, a strength that far exceeds her stature, the ability to heal, and now the ability to wield a huge sword. That girl is going to be one formidable ninja when she gets older. Or even before. After a beat, Inoichi added. Who do you think Sandaime will get to challenge her? You don't think he'd go too hard, do you? The flat look Shikaku leveled him with told a lot. By noon, all of the ninja in the village were informed of Danzo's death. He wasn't a very liked man, the moment of silence was punctuated with coughs and murmurs. Rumors flew about what happened. The official story the civilians got was that he died of a heart attack. Even the Chunin who spread the story knew it sounded hollow, knew no one would believe it. No one did. It sent the rumor mill in overdrive. Soon there was open talk of the man being murdered. There was little anyone could do to squash the rumors, so they were left to fly. An entire conspiracy story was weaved by the evening. At dusk, Sandaime gave a speech. Everyone was expected to attend, dressed in their funeral clothes. Itaka was left at the house after he'd promised Sasuke not to leave. Even then Kakashi practically had to drag Sasuke toward the village proper. Everyone gathered around the tower, looking up from the street. Hiruzen, with his advisors on each side, stood at the balcony. Speakers were set up around the crowd as everyone pushed and crowded to get a closer look. Kakashi and his kids stayed back, as did the rest of the Genin and Guy's team. After taking a deep breath, Hiruzen looked down at the crowd and began to speak. Today I lost a dear friend. Today the village lost a powerful ally. Shimura Danzo loved the village, would have done anything to keep it safe. There are a lot of rumors around, a lot of people believing things that are not true. Let me, the Hokage, put these to rest. Danzo was sick. He had been for a while. His heart chose early this morning to give out on him. He was found in his office, still at his desk. It was likely a peaceful death. The rumors that there is a murderer in the village are scandalous and unfounded. Danzo was well respected among Umbu and ninja alike. I do not believe anyone would have purposely killed him. It is a natural death. A funeral service will be held on the roof when I am done speaking. You are all welcome to attend. Thank you all for listening. It took everything in him not to roll his eyes, but Kakashi managed. He glanced sideways, toward Asuma, who looked equally unimpressed with the information. Of anyone here, Asuma would know that his father is lying through his teeth. Between them, Sakura and Ino were holding hands. Naruto had his fingers twisted in Sasuke's sleeve. There was a murmur in the crowd before they all formed a line, ready to go up one side of the tower, see the body, and exit down the other. Kakashi watched as the kids all stood, quietly, in the back of the line. Asuma stepped close to Kakashi, speaking quietly so as to not be heard by anyone else. Danzo had an arm crudely cut at the shoulder and an eye missing. No one can find either the arm or the eye. Kakashi faked surprise at the words. Official cause of death is blood loss. Both Inoichi and Shikaka got assigned. Ino and Shikamaru know more than they're saying, I'm sure. Kakashi nodded. Couldn't have happened to a nicer man, honestly. Asuma snorted, nudging his shoulder. Any clue why they would take the arm and one eye? Nope. He always kept them hidden, I don't know why anyone would want them. The man shrugged as he lit a cigarette. I don't even think Dad knows why the guy hid them. They were silent for a moment before Kakashi spoke up again. Maybe we should offer our help. I mean, Inoichi and Shikaka could easily become overwhelmed. Oh, of course. This is a big mystery they have on their hands. I'm sure they could use a couple of people to bounce ideas off of. He smirked around the cigarette. What are friends for, right? Kakashi hid a laugh behind a cough. Exactly. As the people walked past the body, seeing it dressed much as he was when alive, hiding the arm and the eye, no one cried. No one cared enough for the man to care. This was lip service, that is all. The genin walked past, did the customary show of condolences, and moved on. As Kakashi stepped up to the body, Sandame's eyes were trained on him. If the old man knew who killed Danzo, he wasn't saying. And it definitely wouldn't be spoken to Kakashi unless he feels as though Sasuke knew. No one was mentioning the genjutsu, so Danzo must have died before it could be seen. Which was great news for Itachi. It seemed as though no one knew the teen was in the village, or that he had a part in Danzo's death. With a solemn nod toward Sandame, Kakashi continued after his kids. He could feel the man's eyes on his back as he walked. It would send chills up his spine if Kakashi wasn't so desensitized to it. At this point, Kakashi simply didn't care. He considered Asuma a close friend and didn't want to cause him any pain, but Hiruzen had held the village back for years, had made multiple mistakes that have hurt people. Mistakes that hurt Naruto and Sasuke. With Danzo gone, Kakashi was sure it would only get worse. With a steel resolve, Kakashi joined the group the genin had made. He looked at Sasuke, who was eager to get home to his brother, and Naruto, who was finally happy after 12 years of being ignored and abused. He looked at Sakura who, after finally gaining self-confidence, had a Hokage willing to rip something she earned away from her. It was time to bring in someone younger. It was time for Hiruzen to give up the title. It was time to allow Orochimaru to kill the Hokage. When it was time to go home, Sakura grabbed Kakashi's hand, getting his attention. Can I go home with Ino? I promise I won't say anything. I don't want her to be home alone tonight. I trust you, Sakura. Kakashi patted her on the head. Your sword will be safe with me. The girl nodded, smiling, before bouncing over to grab Ino's hand. The two girls looked at each other, smiling. Kakashi wouldn't keep them apart, and Sakura knew she couldn't talk about Itachi. She knew what would happen if she did. When Sasuke sent him a questioning look, Kakashi just smiled back. There were 3 times Itachi honestly thought about leaving. The only thing that stopped him was the disappointment Sasuke would feel when he arrived home and Itachi wasn't there. He hurt his brother enough, Itachi did not want to do it again. But he was in a house unfamiliar to him. He spent last night on the couch, with Sasuke's head on his lap. It was so reminiscent of younger days that the teen's chest had ached. The door to Sasuke's room was ajar from when he got changed earlier. Slowly, Itachi pushed it open, seeing the dark colors lit only by the window. There were boxes in the corner full of things he hadn't put away yet. His shelves were covered with books and scrolls and a lonely picture of Team 7. Like their mother pounded into their heads, the bed was made and the clothes were neatly folded in the drawers. Nothing from the Uchiha district could be seen. Was it still in the boxes? Did Sasuke not keep anything? Was it all destroyed? Surely not. Surely Sasuke would have something. He gently opened the boxes, looking at what his brother hadn't gotten around to putting away yet. It wasn't until the 3rd box that Itachi found anything from his previous life. A cracked picture frame with their family picture. A red lantern that used to hang in front of their house on a light pole. 2 kunai with the Uchiha fan forged into the metal. The green dinosaur that Itachi had given to his brother when he was a baby. A small bottle of their mother's perfume. Those are what Sasuke had considered important to him, worth keeping. With the dust settled on the items, Itachi figured they didn't see daylight very often. He wondered when the boy got them. He wondered if it was hard for Sasuke to go back in there if the boy ever just sat on their old front porch or walked their old streets. Placing everything back where it came from, Itachi left the room as he'd found it. He padded his way into the living room, feeling out of place. The outside beckoned him, begging to be seen. It was beautiful here, hidden among the trees and wildlife. With everyone attending a service, Itachi decided to take a chance. As soon as he walked on the porch, the crows circled him. They watched as he put his bare feet in the grass, wriggling his toes against the soft strands. How long had it been since Itachi could just breathe? How long had it been since he could just take in his surroundings without looking for an enemy? Far too long. When Kakashi, Naruto, and Sasuke broke through the path, Itachi was sitting on the porch swing. If the Jounin was going to yell at him, Itachi was prepared for it. Instead, the man just patted him on the shoulder and went inside. Naruto sat on the step and Sasuke sat beside Itachi. They can't find his arm. Naruto casually offered, as if he hadn't been eavesdropping on sensitive information. Or his eye. He glanced back at Itachi, questioning him. Itachi's eyebrow shot up. I left the arm there. Evidence of his depravity. I have the eye, however. When both boys looked at him, Itachi sat back against the swing. It was Shisui's eye. Danzo did not deserve it. He kicked his feet against the deck, making the swing move. He deserved to die. Yup. Naruto nodded in agreement. I believe you. He looked toward the posts Sakura had been steadily destroying. Yeah, no, I think that you should come back sometimes. Just to relax. It's easy to relax here, it's why Sensei picked this place. If he gave us a home, he will give you one, too. Itachi opened his mouth, but Naruto bowled over him. I get you did something really bad. But, sometimes good people do bad things. We learned that on our last mission. Everyone deserves a second chance. He turned around, looking Itachi in the eye. And, besides, Sasuke wants you here. That's enough of a reason for me. Then, as if he hadn't said something profound, Naruto stood up and began walking into the house. I have to pee. The door had barely shut before Itachi began smiling. I see why he's so important to you, Sasuke. He reminds me of Shisui. Always seeing the good in people. Always seeing a bright side. Me and you, we are jaded. This world showed us the bad it can offer. We need people like them in our lives, to remind us that good still exists. Suzuki's eyes were cast down as Itaka talked. But, of course, it was me who showed you that bad side. I guess I have no room to talk. I know you're leaving tonight. Suzuki sounded set and broken as he talked. But Naruto is right. You can come back. I've missed you. No matter how angry I was at you, I still missed you. Itaka pulled him into a hug. I don't want this to be the last time I see you for 5 years. Maybe he and Kakashi could work something out. Find a way to sneak Itaki into the village every once in a while. Whenever he could get away from Kisame, he could come and spend time with Suzuki. Get to know his brother all over again. Before I go, let me teach you something. Suzuki pulled away, his eyes sparkling in the sunset. How are you with Genjutsu? Decent. Itaka smiled, brushing Suzuki's hair out of his face. Well, let's work on that. Kakashi stood on the porch, watching as Itaka summoned his crows to his side. The teen had stayed well into the night working with Suzuki on his Genjutsu and his Sharingan. A few tears were shared during their goodbye before Naruto pulled Suzuki to bed with him. Kakashi doubted the boys would sleep, but he appreciated Naruto's effort. Remember, Itake, you're welcome here anytime. With all that information you left us on Akatsuki, I think we can prove a good case for you. There was so much Kakashi wanted to tell him. He wanted to make Itake understand the background of the Akatsuki, who was really running it, for what reason it was formed, and why it's still active now. There was no way for Kakashi to know any of that, so he had to keep quiet. That didn't mean he couldn't plant the seed. One thing I don't understand, though. Why is Obito part of it? If he was still alive, why not come back to Konoha? There was a flash of something in Itaka's eyes, but the teen shrugged. I don't know. I can find out if I tread lightly. Do not put yourself in danger for this, Itake. Promise me that. The teen looked him in the eye and nodded. Suzuki will never forgive either of us. The crows swarmed around Itake, ready to take him out of the village. Before he disappeared fully, Itake's voice rang out. Thank you for keeping him safe, Kakashi. Then all he heard was flapping wings and crow calls as they moved through the woods. Before heading to bed, Kakashi did his rounds. Checking locks and traps, making sure windows and doors were closed, and then went to his room. He had just settled into bed, Ika Paradise held in one hand when his door creaked open. With Suzuki's pale hand clutched in his tan one, Naruto led the boy to Kakashi's bed. Suzuki's eyes were red-rimmed and shining with tears. Tossing his book back on the stand, Kakashi held out his arms. In an act so unlike himself, Suzuki flung himself at the man, gripping onto his shirt and sobbing. Naruto crawled in beside Kakashi, looking so unsure of what to do. He didn't know what would soothe Suzuki, but he knew what soothed him. Tentatively, Kakashi watched as Naruto's fingers buried themselves in Suzuki's hair, lightly scratching at the boy's scalp. Suzuki didn't push him away, so Naruto kept it up. Suzuki cried himself to sleep, curled against Kakashi. It wasn't long before Naruto was out, too, curled against Kakashi's other side. He wasn't comfortable, crooked, and cramped, but Kakashi refused to move either one of them. Instead, he pulled them both tighter and closed his eyes. Chapter 22, Bittersweet. It has been 2 days since Shimura Danzo died. Hiruzen still couldn't believe it was real. He'd thought that man would outlive his reign as Hokage, maybe go as far as the next Hokage's reign, but Danzo died. Slowly. Painfully. Bleeding out, alone, on the floor of his office. Grieving wasn't something a Hokage had the luxury of. He had a village to lead, hundreds of ninja to control, a political climate to navigate while walking on eggshells, and a sword that didn't belong in Konoha currently being held by a genin with no hope of wielding it properly. And then, on top of all of that, he had a Jounin, formerly one of his most decorated Umbu, that had an abrupt personality change. That man had saved his life, completed some of the most difficult and dangerous missions Hiruzen had, and never questioned anything. He'd believed in the Hokage's law with no exceptions. And then he got genin. It wasn't something Hiruzen wanted to do, but he had to make that small, pink-haired genin understand. A sword of that caliber couldn't just be handed to anyone. Kiri was volatile. If they'd found out about the sword being held by a genin, Well, Naruto might have been right about the rules in Kiri, but that didn't mean they extended to other lands. The entire "you keep what you kill" mentality was old-fashioned. It stemmed from when the ninja was scattered, from before hidden villages were created when chaos and destruction ran rampant. Not now, not since Hiruzen created a peaceful village. He couldn't let that be tainted by a young girl with eyes bigger than her talent. She saw a flashy, shiny sword and got stars in her eyes. And her Jounin sensei, who is supposed to be guiding her in developing her skills and strengths, is not supposed to encourage fanciful thoughts of grandeur. It would hurt her, but it would help her in the long run. He needed someone who would put that little girl in her place. The best swordsman Konoha had at their disposal. "Door," Hiruzen called out to the Umbu on the other side of his office door. The man stepped inside, ready for his orders. "Could you find me Gecko Hate, please? Tell him I need him immediately." It was still early morning, but way past time for ninja to be awake and training. A benefit of having known the people placed on your team from when you were small meant that dropping by their houses wasn't out of the ordinary. So when Shikamaru showed up at Ino's front door, with Koji in tow, Inoichi had no problem letting the boys inside. It wasn't long after that Inoichi swept out of the house, running off to work. They all gathered at the kitchen table as Shikamaru pulled a storage scroll from his pocket. "With training, I haven't had time to think about what you told me before." A folder popped into his hand. "I went digging in Dad's office. Found this whole folder on Danzo." Ino sat forward, excited to see something she definitely wasn't supposed to. "And he deserved to die," Koji said around a mouthful of chips. "He was a bastard." Sakura's mouth dropped open, not ever hearing Koji swear before. The boy just shrugged, shoving more chips in his mouth. Shikamaru shrugged. "If our dads are right, Ino, then this man has tried to have Sandaime killed." Kakashi-sensei stopped the Umbu he sent. Sakura sat up straighter at hearing her own sensei mentioned. "They also think he was behind the Uchiha massacre somehow." "Oh, and that code you found?" "It was for a safe under his desk. Heard Dad talking about it." Greedily, Ino snatched the folder. Sakura hugged her side, looking through it with her. This is amazing." She looked up at Shikamaru. "Did you hear your dad say anything about a missing arm?" Scratching his cheek, Shikamaru thought back. His dad has been suspiciously tight-lipped about this whole mess. He mentioned something was missing. "How do you lose an arm?" There was the rattling of Koji's bag as he got another handful. Sakura knew she was walking a thin line. She knew more than she was supposed to. She knew who killed Danzo. As long as she kept them steered away from Itachi, everything should be fine. Danzo had a lot of enemies, any number of which would want him dead. They had a large pool to choose from. Itachi shouldn't make their list. She listened as they threw out accusations, blaming politicians, daimyos, a number of mercenary groups. It could have been any one of them, or a combination. By the end of their conversation, when Shikamaru hid the folder away again and they all went their separate ways, Itachi was never mentioned. It instantly took a weight off of her shoulders. Taking a break from paperwork and the entire mystery that was Danzo, Shikaku decided to make a visit. He had some news for Kakashi. News that involved Sakura. She came there every day to train, and Shikaku bet that she would be there today, also. He was surprised to see Ino there, standing entirely stiff as Sasuke looked into her eyes. Genjutsu. The boy was perfecting a skill that came naturally to his family line. Kakashi saw him walking through the yard. All around the property were Kakashi's 9 dogs, barking and running. In one corner stood Sakura, swinging that huge sword and neatly cutting through logs thicker than her own waist. Oh, this was going to be a fun conversation. When Shikaku got close to him, he patted his friend on the arm. "I have some interesting news for you." "How secluded are you?" Naruto has been slowly covering the clearing with privacy seals. He hasn't got around the dojo finished yet. Kakashi nodded in the boy's direction. He's been preoccupied with the Raise-Non. But, if you stay around the house, you can't be heard. With an arched eyebrow, Shikaku took in Naruto's spinning ball of blue chakra. Does he know who made that jutsu? Kakashi nodded. Oh, You are rebelling, aren't you? A smirk could be seen through Kakashi's mask. Well, I have some news on who Sakura's opponent will be. I think you'll be surprised at how much Sandaime has not been paying attention. What do you mean? He motioned Shikaku onto the porch and into the house. Naruto's good at Fuinjutsu, but good enough to fool Sandaime Zumbu. Shikaku shrugged. Apparently. He doesn't know Hayate has been training her. Instead, he picked Hayate to go against her. There was a stunned look on his friend's face. Hayate got pulled out of a meeting with me this morning. I guess he just let Sandaime believe what he already believed. That will make Sakura very happy. I know he won't go easy on her, but he also doesn't want her to lose the sword. Shikaku nodded in agreement. With a sigh, Kakashi leaned back in the chair. I don't know who has been more worried, me or her. I'll definitely sleep better tonight. Turning around, Shikaku looked out the window as Sakura easily mowed down another set of logs. She's good. Didn't think she'd have it in her at first. Not the strength, but the skill. She will definitely shock Sandaime. The look on Kakashi's face turned serious. He better not back out of this deal. She will be heartbroken. She earned that sword. Oh, I know. Shikaku agreed. He will have a fight on his hands if he backpedals. You'll have to hold your boys back, Inoichi will hold Ino back, I'll be holding Shikamaru and Koji back. Yeah, it won't be pretty. At Kakashi's confused look, Shikaku just laughed. Oh, you think my boy hasn't been taken in by your team? Or Koji? Your three inspired R3. I've never seen Shikamaru actually want to learn. He started reading the clan book, asking about jutsu from long ago. He wants to disappear in the shadows, Kakashi. Can you believe that? Kakashi just smiled. Proud of his kids for inspiring others. Team 8 is going to start coming around, too. I'm thinking guys' kids won't be long. Niji did get his ass handed to him by Koji. Shikaku barked out a laugh before standing up. I have to get back. Inoichi will be mad if I'm late. So, when are you two getting married? Kakashi joked. Shikaku just frowned before walking out the door. Ino was sitting on the porch when they exited the house, looking lightheaded. Sasuke was standing there, worried. What happened? Shikaku asked, but Ino just waved him off. Sasuke's genjutsu is strong, that's all. She gave him a weak smile. I'll be fine, just need to rest a minute. Then to reiterate, she grabbed Sasuke's hand. I'm fine. It made sense that Sasuke pushed his own genjutsu on too strong. The boy did learn it from Itachi. He would have had to push a lot of chakra behind it, force it through his opponent when his opponent was Itachi himself. Even 2 days after Itachi left, Sasuke still wasn't himself. The boy was still raw, still emotional, clinging to Naruto like a security blanket. Not that the blonde cared. He was all for it, relishing the contact Sasuke had been showing him. It was usually Naruto who reached out, twisting his fingers in Sasuke's arm coverings or his shirt, but now it was reversed. Sasuke. Kakashi pulled the boy from inside his head. Ino is fine, just mentally tired. Once she leans back and rests, she will feel better. He glanced up at Naruto, who was struggling to keep his ball of chakra contained. You could go see if Naruto needs any help. I know he's at the part where he needs to figure it out for himself, but bouncing ideas off of you will go a long way. The boy slowly nodded before leaving the porch. Once he was out of earshot, Kakashi sat down on the swing beside Ino. Now, tell me the truth, how are you? Ino snorted. Dizzy. I felt like I was gonna throw up, but it faded. I have one hell of a headache. She was leaning against the back of the swing, her head tilted back. Do you think Sakura can heal this? I feel too dizzy to try myself. Go inside and lay on the couch, I'll send her in. It was a slow process, but Ino made it inside, hanging onto everything she could. Kakashi jogged out to Sakura. Hey, sweetheart, take a break, okay? Sakura was covered in a sheen of sweat, her hair clinging to her neck. It couldn't have been comfortable. I'm okay, sensei. I can keep going. He smiled. I know you can, but I need your help. We are going to keep this quiet, though, okay? Let's make it look like I need to fix up your hands. Confused, the girl nodded, following her sensei inside. The sword was leaned against the wall outside of the door. Oh, Ino. She raced to the girl's side. What happened? Suzuki's genjutsu is, well, it's something. Ino was looking pale as she lay there. Can you heal me? Nodding, Sakura held a glowing hand over Ino's forehead. The color began fading back into the blonde girl's cheeks. Wow. He really did a number on you, didn't he? She looked up at Kakashi. Guess it's in his blood. That sentence had a double meaning, but only Kakashi picked it up. He nodded. Okay, Ino, sit up slowly. See how you feel. Oh, so much better. Ino smiled. I think I'll refrain from genjutsu for the rest of the day. Kakashi put a hand on Sakura's shoulder. I have some news for you, Sakura. Sandaime has chosen your opponent. The fear that hit her face was instant. Now, hold on. I think you'll be surprised at who it is. Apparently, Naruto's seals are working because he didn't know who I got to help you train. He picked Hayate to challenge you. Piercing green eyes widened before a smile came over her face. Seriously? Hayate-sensei? That's awesome. She bounced on the balls of her feet. I know he will challenge me, but he wants me to have her, right? Right. Kakashi just hoped that Sandaime would hold up his end of the deal. Sakura didn't sleep. Her brain wouldn't shut up. She kept seeing Sandaime taking Kyubiku Ibisho away from her. In her mind, she watched as he handed it to Kiri Ninja, as they snarled at her, told her she wasn't good enough for it. She heard Sandaime saying that she would never train in Kenjutsu again. Then, her teammates were laughing at her, saying they knew it all along. She sat straight up in bed, startling Ino who had an arm wrapped around her. Some last-minute training couldn't hurt, right? She had to be ready. She had to be strong, on point, perfect. Sakura. The sword glimmered in the moonlight, leaned against Ino's wall. Sakura. A pale hand gripped her chin, forcing Sakura's gaze from the sword. What's wrong? I have to keep practicing. I can't lose. I have to be perfect. If he sees that I'm proficient, he has to let me keep her, right? I have to be perfect. I need to practice. The pale eyes looking back at Sakura shimmered. Oh, Sakura. She pulled the girl into a hug. You can't do this to yourself. You need rest and to take a deep breath. Everything will be okay, you just have to believe it. Believe in yourself. When Ino pulled back and saw Sakura's eyes were still a little wild, she sighed. I know that your parents put this belief in you that nothing you do is good enough, but they were wrong. You are strong. Amazing. Talented. Brilliant. People care about you because of who you are, not what they want you to be. She wanted to believe that, Sakura really did, but she always had her parents' voices in the back of her mind. Like a broken record, constantly skipping back to the times she wasn't perfect. All those times she came home with scraped knees and cuts on her fingers. The time she came home with an essay that didn't get a perfect grade. All those times she had to hide her report card because Iruka-sensei always scored her taijutsu low. And, now, another person above her, another person with authority, telling her she wasn't good enough. Laying back down with Ino, Sakura did fall to sleep, but it was restless. Her mind never stopped its mantra. By daybreak, she was tired. Getting dressed felt like a chore. Her stomach churned when Inoichi sat breakfast in front of her. Somehow, she managed to force some of it down, and it surprised her the food didn't come right back up. She stood at the doorway, staring at her pink-stitched halter. Would this be the last time she'd wear it? Honey. Inoichi knelt down beside her. Whatever happens today, know that you trained hard. Know that you did everything right. Know that we are all proud of you. He wiped a tear off of her cheek. I'll be there. So will Ino. Your team, of course. And everyone else that believes in you will be there. And, remember, we are all so proud of you. All of us. He reached up and pulled the halter off the hook. Now, let's get you suited up. By the time they reached the training field Sandaime had assigned them, there was already a circle of people. On one side stood Sandaime, his two umbu, and the two advisors. On the other stood her team, Ino's team, Team 8, and Guy's team. Shikaku, Kurane, Asuma, and Guy were also there, smiling as she walked up. Naruto ran over, hugging Sakura tightly. He pulled her toward Sasuke, who, surprisingly, also hugged her. Then Kakashi knelt down in front of her. "Look at me." Sakura did as she was asked. "We know how hard you trained. We were there. We are all proud of you." He pulled her into a hug. "You've come a long way from the little girl I first met, you know. Of all the team, you came the farthest. And that was all you and the hard work you did." Kakashi pulled back, tapping her under the chin. "Now, hold your head high and show that old man what you can do." He succeeded in getting a small giggle from her before Sakura turned around and faced the training field. She had to pretend she'd never met Hayate before, like she doesn't know he's kind and patient and a great teacher. Instead, she looked at him as if he was the enemy, just like he taught her. With her head held high, she walked onto the dirt. The man stood on the other side, swinging a katana around in his hand. He held a look of disinterest on his face, as if he had much better things to do, as if this wouldn't be a challenge. Hayate rolled his shoulders, loosening up for the match. Sakura pulled the Kyubikurei Basho around her, letting it thump on the dirt. Hayate taught her the art of deception. Let people think you honestly can't wield the sword, let them think you have no idea what you're doing. Let them make the wrong assumptions. More importantly, let the Hokage believe Sakura couldn't wield it. It will make the win all the more sweet. Hayate tilted his head to the side, looking the sword over. "Lord Hokage, what do you want me to do if she can't even lift it?" A hand gripped Naruto's shoulder before he could yell out. The boy snapped his mouth shut. "I mean, that's the Kyubikurei Basho, sir. It probably weighs more than she does. She needs to understand what wielding a sword really means." There were a lot of eyes on Hiruzen as he spoke. "She needs to learn that just because you take something doesn't make it yours." Inoichi stepped closer to Kakashi, ready to remind the Jounin not to fight back. "I'm ordering you, Hayate, to go at her as if she's an enemy." Somewhere in the crowd, Kiba began to yell, but Kurane held a hand over his mouth. The sad fact was, that was the Hokage speaking. Any arguing back could be seen as insubordination, and the man was already on edge. The death of Danzo did not bring that man any peace. Instead, it felt as if he was taking his grief out on Sakura. Kakashi counted his lucky stars that Hayate was picked as the opponent, or this fight could go bad fast. Chancing a glance, Sakura looked toward Kakashi. His eyes were like steel, body tense. Sakura knew what her sensei looked like when preparing for a fight, and he was preparing for a big one. Making sure he was paying attention, Sakura stood up straight and held her head high. If Sandaime wanted a show, he was going to get one. An indent of a smirk formed on Kakashi's mask. "Ready, little girl?" Hayate called out. It was the same thing he said to her before every practice. She nodded. She could do this. Hayate ran at her, sword at the ready. Sakura stood still, pretending as if she couldn't lift the sword off the ground. She made a great show of her eyes widening, looking scared. Then, at the last second, she held it up, blocking the attack. Sparks flew as metal hit metal. The sword was too big for quick hits. It required another skill, strength for hits that caused great damage. What Sakura lacked in speed she made up for in mixing taijutsu and kenjutsu together. At one point, Sakura jammed the tip of the sword in the ground, using the hilt to propel herself around, kicking Hayate in the face. The man staggered backward, wiping blood off his lip with his hand. He barely had time to readjust before Sakura pulled the sword out, swinging it over her head. With the katana held horizontally, he tried to block the attack. Instead, the katana cracked in half and Hayate barely dodged a sword through his arm. Inoichi risked a glance at Sandaime, who wasn't giving anything away with his facial expressions. His advisors, however, were shocked. The kids were cheering Sakura on, jumping up and down, yelling praise. Kakashi was still tense and would be until the fight ended. Ino's hands were over her mouth, worry in her eyes. With no sword to call on, Hayate was on the defensive. He dodged another hit, watching as the ground separated under the force. A roll and Hayate had the hilt and half of his sword gripped tightly. It wasn't much, but he'd fought with worse. It at least kept the majority of hits from making contact. He took a hit in the arm to land a kick into Sakura's torso. It pushed her backward, knocking the sword from her hand. Kyobikuraibisho clattered to the ground between them. Hayate was bleeding, various cuts decorating his arms, legs, and torso. There was a slice on Sakura's cheek, blood dripping down into the corner of her mouth. With a glowing hand, Sakura healed it. Done. Hayate called out, waving his half a sword at her. Narrowing her eyes, Sakura cracked her knuckles. Nope. With a punch to the ground, she lifted the sword up with the earth, sending it sliding back toward her. As she stood up straight, sword held out perpendicular to her, Hayate glanced at Hiruzen. The advisors were whispering to him, their eyes trained on Sakura and a hand held over their mouths. He held a hand up, causing both of them to draw back. With his robe dragging on the ground, Hiruzen stepped forward. Sakura dropped the sword tip to the ground, still gripping the hilt. The old man looked her over before turning and looking at Hayate. There were more cuts on Sakura's body that she hadn't healed yet. Cuts where Hayate's katana got too close before she could capitalize. Hayate was nursing a particularly deep cut on his arm at the moment. Hiruzen turned back to Sakura, something in his eyes that she couldn't name. When I challenged you, it was under the assumption that you could not even lift the sword. I see, now, that I jumped to the wrong conclusion. You fought well, better than I thought you would with only a week to train. I promised you that, if you could wield the sword proficiently, then I would allow you to keep it. I do intend to keep that promise. Genin were cheering, but Hiruzen held up a hand. However, the sword does not leave Konoha. It's too dangerous to carry one of the 7 ninja swordsman swords around with you. He looked up at Kakashi. Do you understand? There was a rumble that went through the crowd, murmurs of the Hokage being unfair. The Jounin tried to keep their students quiet, tried to keep them from irritating the situation any further, but it was difficult with so many outspoken genin in one place. Ino, Naruto, and Kiba voiced their disdain the loudest, their voices rising above everyone else. It was a cacophony of telling the Hokage just how petty he was being. Hiruzen had never stood among such a display of insubordination and, after losing a close friend and learning the misdoings that friend had been partaking, he was in no mood for it. He raised a hand, trying to silence them. Before Kakashi could get a grip on Naruto, the boy yelled one last insult. How can we respect you if you don't respect us? The training field went completely silent. Just the wind whistling through the trees could be heard. With his Hokage robe blowing in the breeze, Hiruzen leveled his gaze at Naruto. Respect must be earned. All today has proven to me is that your Jounin sensei is not teaching you discipline. Allowing a genin to entertain illusions of grandeur is not teaching them anything. I have allowed you to get away with too much, Naruto. I won't make that mistake again. It's time for you to grow up, stop playing ninja, and actually be one. Your first lesson, you cannot have everything you want. Naruto opened his mouth to retort, but Hiruzen dropped a threat. One more word, Naruto, and that cozy living arrangement you have will be stopped. Fear rippled through the boy, his blue eyes wide. Hiruzen then set his sights on Kakashi. That sword had better be locked up before the end of the day. I will have someone checking on it. Kakashi put his arm around a shaking Naruto. He was ready to open his mouth, to finally cross the line, to tell the truth, to show everyone what this man truly was, when Inoichi placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Kakashi held his tongue, if only because not doing so could rip his kids away from him. Instead, he nodded, a quick jerk of his head, and bit his tongue so hard he tasted blood. Hiruzen turned and left, his white robe dragging behind him. The advisors looked at Naruto, then Kakashi, then Sakura before following after Hiruzen. Asuma whispered something to Kurane before jogging after his father. For Sakura, it was a hollow victory. Did she win the fight? Yes. But at what cost? Naruto was broken, his world shattered, all because he tried to protect her. The Sharingan spun wildly in Sasuke's eyes as he grit his teeth together. He was angry, seething, aching to hit something, burn something to the ground. He turned to look at Kakashi, who looked like he could kill. Through the silence, they heard Hayate walking toward Sakura. The man knelt down, a sad smile on his face. I know this is bittersweet, but you proved what you came to prove. You learned how to use that sword in a week. Little girl, Kenjutsu took me years to master. I feel that you won't need nearly that long. He turned to Kakashi. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to train her. With that, he left. The genin wasn't sure what to do. They all stood still. All but Ino, who rushed forward, wrapping her arms around Sakura. You are amazing. Absolutely amazing. Then the rest of them rushed forward, all congratulating her, cheering Sakura's name. Within all the cheering, Kakashi knelt down to Naruto. Look at me. Watery blue eyes met his. I promised you, didn't I? I promised none of us will be alone again, right? I never go back on my word. He pulled Naruto into a tight hug. Someone amazing taught me that. Who? Kakashi smiled. You did. Hiruzen no sooner got into his office and sat down in his chair than Asuma pushed the doors open so hard they bounced off the walls. Before the old man could say anything, his son slammed his hands on the desk so hard the wood shook. What the hell, Dad? Asuma stared his father down. You've been a lot of things, but you've never been cruel. All the shit that poor boy has gone through in his life, being alone and shunned, and you dangle the first home he's ever had over his head? And Sakura. That girl learned how to use that sword, damn well I might add, in 1 week, and you just shit on all of her hard work. I get that you lost a friend, but taking your grief out on Genin is just disgusting. With his eyes downcast, Hiruzen took a deep breath. Are you done? When Asuma didn't answer, the old man clenched his fists. I have had it with insubordination. I will not tolerate it from my own son. Don't pull that shit with me. Asuma always was the wild child. He never listened, went his own way. Hiruzen hated that. You're pissed because Kakashi started standing up to you. He got 3 children to protect and now he's fighting for what's right. I hate to break it to you, Dad, but if you mess with my 3, it will be the same thing. I'm damn sure Kurane and Guy will feel the same way. Hiruzen's eyes were dangerous. It's my job to protect this village, to keep the peace. Allowing a genin to walk around with that sword is opening Konoha up to attack. Asuma laughed. What are you on about? Kiri is not going to start the 4th Great Ninja War over a damn sword. They are too busy fighting between themselves to worry about that. They have enough weapons in that blood-soaked village. I'm not debating this with you, Asuma. I highly suggest you drop this subject and leave my office. The old man made a show of picking up a report to show he had work to do. The sword stays in this village and that is my final word on the matter. Asuma stood there for a moment before throwing his hands up and walking away. In the corner of the living room, standing on a specially designed scroll, was the cubic Araibasho. It hovered in midair inside of a rectangular barrier. The edges glowed a bright blue that made the barrier emit light all around, glinting off of the metal surface of the sword. The scroll was tuned to Sakura's specific chakra signature, and would only respond to her. If anyone else attempted to touch the barrier, they would get a high-voltage shock. If they reached inside the barrier, the air would burn the skin. Naruto tested his design with a clone. The clone's hand turned black as it screamed in pain. Naruto decided that was strong enough and kept the seal as it was. She refused to cry when the Anbu came into the house, checking the strength of the seal. She refused to cry as they handed her a letter from the Hokage, outlining the terms of keeping the sword. She refused to cry when they left. Kakashi took a seat on the chair, opening his arms and beckoning Sakura to him. She stood firm for a few seconds before dissolving into tears and clinging to her sensei. He hushed her, soothed her, whispered how strong she was and how amazing she looked while fighting. He held onto her as she cried herself to sleep. He swallowed down the anger and hate and bile it created as he pressed a kiss into her pink hair. Standing in the doorway of Naruto's room, Sasuke watched as the blonde pushed a box further into the corner. The box held the few things Naruto had collected over his 12 years. They were the only things Kakashi and Sasuke could salvage from his destroyed apartment. He had been slowly putting them on shelves, organizing in a way that only made sense to Naruto himself. Now the box was shut, pushed into the corner as if waiting to be moved. His hands were shaking as he unzipped the orange jacket, hanging it gently over his desk chair. Sasuke knew these movements. Naruto got erratic, meticulous, obsessive, right before a panic attack. One sleeve of the jacket hung lower than the other. Tanned hands adjusted it until they were even. He looked toward the bed, one corner wrinkled and flipped up. In sharp, jagged movements, Naruto fixed the blanket, smoothing out the creases over and over again. When they weren't going away, when just stretching the fabric with his hand wouldn't smooth the lines, Naruto's breathing picked up, got harder, shallow, quicker. Naruto. Sasuke stepped further into the room, reaching his hand toward Naruto's shoulder. The blonde's muscles were so tense he felt like stone under Sasuke's fingers. He hadn't witnessed a panic attack since before they moved in, since before their Land of Waves mission. But it had been building since the Sand Aim threatened him, threatened to take his home away from him. He won't take this away from us. Kakashi won't let him. A shuddering breath left Naruto. We won't let him. He will remove me, Sasuke. Not you. Naruto's voice was hoarse. There is no we when it will only be me leaving. You will still be here with Sensei. Sasuke turned Naruto around, made the boy look at him. You and Sakura always prance around yelling about how we're a family, but you're willing to give it up that easily? Where's the real Naruto? Where's the idiot who fights when everything is stacked against him? In a role reversal, it was Naruto who was quiet and subdued. His blue eyes flickered up to Sasuke, sad and dejected. A ninja needs to pick their battles, retreat when they can't win. What if this is the fight I can't win? Then I need to get out before people get hurt. You and Sensei can still be happy. Not without you. Before Naruto could say anything else, Sasuke put a hand over the blonde's mouth. Not without you. With wide blue eyes, Naruto stared at Sasuke. He was looking for sarcasm, for it to be a joke, for something. When he didn't find it, when he only found sincerity, Naruto mumbled against Sasuke's hand. Once his mouth was uncovered, Naruto smiled before wrapping his arms around his friend. Thank you, Sasuke. Did you have fun? With a tilt of his head, Obito stuck his bright orange mask in Itake's face. Is your baby brother okay? It was no use asking how Obito knew where he was, Itachi knew the man had his ways. More often than not, it was the Zetsus who followed him. Yes, he is fine. As the person who helped him massacre the clan, Obito was one of the few who knew about the deal. The man loved holding it over Itachi's head at every given chance. Humming, Obito hopped on the table Itachi was sitting at. The glass of water Itachi was drinking shook, splashing over the sides and onto the wood. The teen didn't bother to hide his annoyance. Ah, brotherly love. How adorable. Itachi rolled his eyes. Were you aware that, at this given moment, there are only 3 Uchiha left on this world? Me, you, and that baby brother of yours. It will be our job to revive the clan once we bring in the new world. Then it won't be a pure line anymore. This line of questioning was new. Itachi wasn't sure where this conversation was going. There is a chance the Sharingan will fade out. It wasn't likely. The Uchiha genes were stronger than most other clans. Matched only by the Hyuga. Obito laughed, pulling 2 vials from his pocket. Not with these. Madara gave me all of his knowledge about Hashirama. I have 2 vials of his cells and, within them, his DNA. Think of what we could create with this, Itachi. The teen opened his mouth to speak, but Obito shook his head. Zetsu is very good at stealth when they wants to be. While you were playing house, they were working. Oh, which reminds me, I want to thank you for Danzo's arm. The fact that the disgusting parasite thought he deserved to have 1 Sharingan, let alone nearly a dozen, is baffling, isn't it? That arm will be a great addition to the cause. You did great, Itachi. Itachi tried hard to keep his face blank, to keep his eyes from widening. Zetsu left everything else. Konoha will know of his depravity. Although the people working under him are scrambling, still trying to find the arm. It's quite amusing, apparently. Hopping off the table and spilling more water onto the wood, Obito clapped Itachi across the back before beginning to walk away. Kakashi is my brother's Jounin-sensei. At Itachi's words, Obito's steps stuttered. With his back still to Itachi, the man tilted his head. They actually gave him a genin team? Is Sandaime senile? There was a pause before Obito spoke again. Is he good to your brother? Wasn't that interesting? Yes. He really is. Obito nodded. Then he stood straight and held his head up high before finally exiting the room. Itachi filed that interaction away for him to reflect on later. Right now, however, Itachi needed to figure out how to send a message to Kakashi. Zetsu would be watching him, watching the crows. He needed something else, something they didn't know about, something small and fast and quiet and could protect itself. Well, that gave him an idea. With the only light around them coming from the campfire, Sai looked over at Shin. A lot had changed since they were children. Lord Danzo had taught them to abandon emotions. They made you weak, they got in the way, but it was the hardest lesson for Sai to learn. He loved his brother, whether they were blood or not, and Sai fought to lose the feelings he had for the teen. Shin didn't seem to be having any easier of a time with it. There was cracking in the brush, causing both Shin and Sai to grip a kunai before two unmarked Anbu broke into the clearing. Lord Danzo is dead. Root has been unearthed. The contingency plan is activated. With that, the two Anbu left. With a start, Shin jumped up. It was the most emotion Sai had seen for months. Do you realize what this means? We're free. Shin ran over and grabbed Sai by the upper arms, pulling him to his feet. Sai. We are free. Free. The entire concept seemed strange to him. Since he was little, all Sai had known was Lord Danzo and Shin. What did being free mean for him? Would he be alone now? What does that mean for us? A sad look came over Shin's face. Oh, Sai, it means we can be happy. You didn't know this, but Danzo was going to make us fight to the death. The survivor became his soldier. You're my brother, Sai, I did not want to fight you. Now we won't have to. We can just be free, now. Free? What a strange concept. Chapter 23, Unexpected Visitor. There was a solemn quiet settled over the village. From the outside, it was as if all was well. The quiet peace of a village thriving. However, for 9 genin, a storm was brewing. A low rumble of thunder in the distance, the warning of a natural disaster imminent. It was a silent agreement and unspoken meeting place and time where they all could commiserate and discuss the atrocity that took place the previous day. With a kunai in his hand, Kiba traced a random pattern into the dirt. They were all sitting in a circle, all trying to think of something to say, some way to explain how they were feeling. This is bullshit. The kunai Kiba was holding was buried into the ground. He can't just do that, can he? He can do what he wants. Tenten flicked a piece of grass off her sandal. He's the Hokage. Doesn't make it right. Ino felt terrible. She knew how important yesterday was for Sakura, and how heartbroken the girl had to be. Sakura worked really hard. She learned how to use that sword in a week. Shikamaru snorted. Not to mention what he said to Naruto. He shook his head. Who threatens a kid with his home? That's just low. Shikamaru had spent all evening staring at a shogi board, glaring at the king piece. How could he be expected to protect a man who didn't protect his own villagers? Hugging his knees to his chest, Niji tapped his fingers against his shin. That kid is different. Why would he challenge the Hokage like that? The genin's eyes snapped to Niji. Koji cleared his throat. I forgot you didn't go to the academy with us. He always had this strange relationship with the Hokage, called him Hokage-jiji. It always felt as if Sandaime was trying to, I don't know, make up for something? Does that make sense? Like he treated Naruto different because he felt like he should. Naruto could get away with a lot. Guess not anymore. Kiba shook his head. That was just cruel. When Guy's team just looked on, more confused than they were before, Ino tried to help them, tried to explain. Naruto's an orphan. I don't think he knows who his parents are at all. He's always been alone. The little apartment he used to live in. They put him in there when he was 4. Alone. Tenten's eyes widened. So threatening to take him out of the first home he's ever known? Terrible. Oh my. Tenten put her hands over her cheeks. I can't believe, that's horrible. Then you have Sakura. Her parents always demanded perfection. Nothing Sakura did was ever good enough. When she finally stood up to them, finally told them what she wanted for herself, they kicked her out. She does something amazing in getting that sword and learning Kenjutsu within a week, and the Hokage rips it away from her. Just another adult making Sakura feel like she's not good enough. Ino gripped the grass so hard she pulled a clump of it out of the ground, root and all. She had to be heartbroken last night. As timid as she was, Hinata looked up at Ino, her eyes hard. She entirely understood what not being good enough felt like. She'd been told that her whole life by her own father. Always put second, after her younger sister. It was heartbreaking, made Hinata's anxiety worse. But what Hinata lacked in skill she made up for in intelligence. She paid attention in class. Kiri have rules. You keep what you defeat. It would be an insult to send it back. Shino chimed in. And Kiri is already a bomb waiting to go off. Wouldn't keeping that sword locked up be just as much of an insult, though? Kiba looked around at the genin. I mean, if Kiri has that, keep what you kill, thing, then just putting it on a shelf would make it nothing more than a trophy? I don't think that's what they meant. After a bit of silence, Ino threw her hands up. You know what? I'll just say it. I think Sandaime is too damn old to lead and needs to step down. There. I said it. She looked around at the shocked faces. Oh, get over yourselves. You were all thinking it. We can't get him overthrown until after the Chiryunin exams. Shikamaru sighed. If we change leaders now, they will cancel the exams. And I actually trained, you know. I'm not wasting work I actually put into something. Ino and Kiba began laughing so hard they doubled over. Soon, the entire group was a laughing pile on the ground. Shikamaru, however, did not find it humorous. In his many years as commanding officer of Konoha's torture and interrogation unit, how many years he refused to admit, Marino Ibiki had never come up against such horrible actions. In general, anybody assigned to Umbu saw horrible actions, committed horrible actions, but usually retained some of their humanity. These Umbu, ones trained especially by Danzo, were hardened emotionless machines. It was as if they didn't feel pain at all. Ibiki knew how to inflict the most amount of pain, yet keep them conscious and talking. These Umbu were barely human, barely flinching when the pain was inflicted. It would have been terrifying if Ibiki got terrified anymore. Nothing seemed to faze them. The man was dead, and yet these Umbu were still fiercely loyal to him. The man in the chair, just a kid in Ibiki's eyes, stared straight ahead at a point in the wall. Never moved. Barely blinked. Perfectly silent. It was unnerving, even to a seasoned veteran like Ibiki. A click was heard before the door to the interrogation room opened. Stepping around the mess on the floor, Inoichi took in the young man. There was blood dripping down his face, down his arm, down his legs. His fingernails were removed, as were his toenails. Nothing. Ibiki snorted. I'm considering removing a limb, to be honest. No response from the man. Or a couple of them, just for pissing me off. Still nothing. Ibiki looked ready to kill. Did Lord Hokage approve the Psycho Mind transmission? Yeah. The amplification machine is being prepped in case it's needed. Inoichi handed Ibiki the signed slip of paper. I can start when you're ready. Waving a hand at the prisoner, Ibiki encouraged Inoichi on. With a nod, the blonde stepped forward, placing a hand on the prisoner's head. He was thrust into the other's mind, a series of locked doors blocking his way. It was nothing Inoichi hadn't seen before. Within moments, he was surrounded by large red doors, all sealed shut. Ah! Mental blocks. That didn't surprise him at all. Any criminal worth their salt would have any critical information behind a couple of mental blocks. However, these mental blocks were different. They were sealed tighter, more effort put behind them. The prisoner wasn't nervous when Inoichi came near him as if he knew the jutsu wouldn't work. Inoichi stepped back into reality, removing his hand from the prisoner's head. What did you find? Running his hand through his blonde hair, Inoichi turned to Ibiki. We're going to need the amplification machine. He's got multiple mental blocks that we'll need time to remove. I'm assuming the rest of the Rogumbu will be much the same. Cursing, Ibiki smacked a fist against the wall. What is Danzo hiding? You'll never find out. The man in the chair said with a smirk. The first words he'd said since being captured. Blood poured from his mouth as he talked. With a growl, Ibiki punched him, effectively knocking the man unconscious. Well, then. Inoichi turned toward the door. I'll see you in a few. Ibiki grunted at him as he left the room. Standing in the hallway, Shikaka waited for him, eyebrow raised. It's dangerous to make that man angry. Shikaka smirked as he walked beside Inoichi. Haven't needed the amplifier in a while. The blonde nodded. You're worried. The man didn't have to ask the question, he knew how to read his ex-teammate. The mental blocks are strong, then. In general, mental blocks are put on using a genjutsu, but these ones? They were put on by a user that is very proficient. Uchiha level genjutsu. Shaking his head, Inoichi shoved his hands in his pockets. Of course, that's impossible, right? Itaki is long gone and Sasuke isn't at a level to do something like this. And we both know Kakashi isn't involved. So who does that leave? There was a long pause before Shikaka let out a breath. If I didn't know any better, I'd think Danzo had a Sharingan in that eye he lost. Inoichi stopped walking. That would be crazy. He would have to have stolen it from a dead Uchiha. Green eyes widened as they stared at Shikaku. Or he caused the death. Are we missing something? Something big. I think we are, my old friend. Shikaku tilted his head back and sighed. Why is nothing we get into ever easy? Inoichi snorted. Sitting on the edge of the couch, Sakura just stared at her floating sword. The blue glow from the barrier shined off of the metal, reflecting on the wall. It would have been beautiful if it wasn't so tragic. There was a crick in her neck from the position she slept in while curled on her sensei's lap. Absent-mindedly, she rubbed at the sore spot before easing it with a green glowing hand. A dip in the couch made her slide her eyes toward her right. Stop torturing yourself. Sasuke was picking at some lint on his shorts. Our unhealthy way of dealing with things is to punch something. Come outside and take it out on a clone. Sakura sighed. It might be childish, but I hate him. We all do. Sasuke pushed himself up before grabbing Sakura's bicep and pulling her up as well. Naruto will transform his clone into the Hokage and you can take your anger out, okay? Sakura nodded. Although it shouldn't be, the idea was very appealing. They found Kakashi and Naruto sitting on the porch. The seal the blonde had been working on for the past weeks, painted carefully down his arm, was glowing red. The runes and symbols seemed to twist and morph in the glow as Naruto held his hand over the seal. A hiss left his mouth before Naruto pulled his hand away. The symbols faded back to black. See, sensei? What am I doing wrong? Naruto was getting impatient with this seal of his own making. When it was finished, it would hold a portion of his chakra as a reserve, ready to be tapped into whenever needed. An added benefit was that he could choose to share his chakra with others, making it useful for his entire team. I've reworked the runes, but it gets overloaded or something. Kakashi scratched his chin. What did you use as a base? A chakra trap. I thought, since it's made to hold chakra, it would work better? I changed the runes to allow the chakra back out. Oh. What if, instead of allowing the chakra back out, I change how you guys pull it out? If I put a seal on you and link it to mine, Naruto's voice trailed off as he grabbed a pen and paper, scribbling his idea down. Although weeks ago, the seal on his arm had been scrubbed off and redrawn a multitude of times. He'd had this idea since Fuinjutsu was introduced to him, and the boy wanted to finish it. While Naruto mumbled to himself, Kakashi turned his eyes to Sasuke and Sakura. What's up? Can Naruto make a clone of the Hokage so Sakura can punch it? Sasuke had his arms crossed, eyes trained on the woods around them. Or is that too far? Naruto paused in his doodling, making a clone appear at his side. The clone grabbed Sakura's hand, pulling her out into the yard. Sasuke followed them, hiding a smirk in the high collar of his shirt. A quick transformation and a henge of the Hokage stood there. Sakura's green eyes darkened, pulling her arm back. The punch she leveled the clone popped him almost immediately. She had to admit, as the smoke cleared, she did feel a bit better. Naruto yelled out, asking Sakura if she wanted another one. She was tempted to take him up on the offer when a small animal peeked out of the woods. Its nose twitched before running across the yard and up Sasuke's leg. Sakura screamed, jumping back. It wrapped itself around Sasuke's neck, making a low trilling sound. What is it?" Sakura asked as Kakashi and Naruto joined them in the yard. The little mammal had short, stubby legs and a long body covered in orange-brown fur. The underside was a snowy white. He had darker markings on the tips of his ears, paws, and around his mouth. Holding out a hand, Kakashi watched as the animal sniffed at his fingers, looking at him quizzically. "This is a weasel?" The little mammal in question trilled again. "Very quick and very intelligent." He leaned down, staring into the weasel's eyes. "They are also very skittish. So, little one, why have you decided to come to us?" With a very high-pitched trill, the weasel flicked its tail toward Kakashi. Still afraid of the animal, Sakura stayed a fair distance back. Naruto, however, put his face right in front of the weasel. "It's kind of cute." He gently reached out his tan hand. "Can we be friends?" There was a moment of hesitation before the weasel let out a hiss. Naruto jumped back, eyes wide. Kakashi put a hand on the boy's back. "One of the weasel's predators is the fox. He probably senses him inside of you." He gave Naruto an apologetic look. "Sorry, kiddo. But why is it here?" Sakura was still eyeing the animal warily, watching as it wrapped around Sasuke's neck tighter, making a sound that resembled a purr. "What does it want?" He didn't have a definite answer for Sakura. The little black eyes bore into him, like it was waiting. Waiting for what? And why would it come directly for Sasuke? "Oh. Bring it in the house, Sasuke." It must have been the tone of his voice, but all three kids snapped to attention. Once inside, they all took a seat at the kitchen table. The weasel jumped onto the table, sitting up on its hind legs, showing a glowing seal hidden underneath the white fur. "Ah, that makes a lot of sense." Naruto leaned forward, eyes on the seal. "Who put a storage seal on him?" "It's a boy," Sakura asked. The weasel turned to look at her, indignant. "I think I just got told off." Holding out his hand, Kakashi asked the animal for permission to unlock the seal. He dropped down on all fours and slowly hopped toward Kakashi. "Can we see what you brought us?" The weasel stood back up, holding still as Kakashi placed his hand over the seal. Two folded pieces of paper appeared on his hand. "Ah, thank you." The first paper he unfolded had paragraphs of carefully written text, signed Itachi. The second folded paper had Sasuke written neatly on the outside. "The weasel is from Itachi." Kakashi slid the paper over to Sasuke. Bouncing up Sasuke's arm, the weasel wrapped himself up in the high-collar shirt. "Your brother wrote you a letter." Sakura smiled. "That's awesome." Naruto enthusiastically agreed, smiling across the table at him. "If you don't want to read it in front of us, Sasuke, we will understand." The boy shook his head, unfolding the letter right there. Kakashi slowly worked his way through the massive amounts of information Itachi had written down. Obito knew what happened. Apparently he had a spy that could go anywhere, hide anywhere, could find out anything. Itachi called it Zetsu but said it's not exactly human. That was an understatement. It had taken Danzo's arm, meaning Shikaku and Inoichi are chasing their tails looking for it. There was a jolt that went through Kakashi when he realized what that meant. Had he just made Obito more powerful? With everything else Kakashi had changed, it shouldn't have surprised him that something bad could have happened. They always said messing with the past wasn't a smart decision. How could he fix this? Tucked into his own letter, Sasuke took in everything he read. Itachi was still training him through words. He told Sasuke about the Naka Shrine, about how there are clan secrets held deep within that could make Sasuke powerful. He told Sasuke to remember there is nothing more important than protecting those special to him. Then, at the end of the letter, Itaka warned him about a man named Orochimaru, one of the great Sunin. An entire paragraph was written about Orochimaru attempting to take over Itaka's body, wanting to take the Sharingan for his own. With his attempt failing with one Uchiha, Itaka was afraid the man would come for Sasuke. With his paper laying on the table, Kakashi tapped his fingers on the wood. He needed to think this through, needed to decide how to proceed. Flicking his gaze over to Sasuke, he saw the boy looking confused. Well, my letter was shocking. How about yours? Have you ever met Orochimaru? Kakashi froze. Why was Sasuke asking about him? Didn't Kakashi save him, make him realize he didn't need that man to get stronger? Itaka said that he might come after me. Said he wants the Sharingan. Relief flooded through Kakashi's body. Oh. Only once. The third finally made him leave the village after he was found doing experiments on children. All three of his kids stared at him. A friend of mine, that one that helped build this house, Tenzo? He was one of Orochimaru's subjects. Tenzo was the only one who survived the experiment out of 60 children. What experiment? Sakura sounded like she was afraid to hear the answer. He was injected with the first Hokage's DNA. Orochimaru was caught for his previous experiments and didn't get to finish. He didn't know Tenzo survived. Now he is the only other person to use wood style. Kakashi sighed. That man is evil. I don't know if he was born that way, or made that way, but he values science and knowledge overall. Even at the expense of others. Sasuke looked down at the sheet of paper. So he just wants the Sharingan to experiment on it. Kakashi shrugged. There are rumors that he takes over people's bodies to stay alive, effectively making him immortal. Maybe he wants a body with a Jujutsu this time. Either way, we will keep him away from you, Sasuke. Itaka said Orochimaru attacked him. Sasuke looked at his team around the table. He's not getting me, either. Honestly, Kakashi could have cried in joy. Now to teach the kids how to, at the very least, fight Orochimaru away. He didn't want the kids to kill him, just do enough damage that Orochimaru would run. Well, I think we should work on some skills so you will be ready for the Chunin exams. There were matching expressions on the kids' faces. What should have been excitement was met with trepidation. What's wrong? I thought you kids would be excited. If we pass, Naruto began, his voice low, then you won't be our sensei anymore. We won't be a family anymore. Kakashi hooked his foot around Naruto's chair leg, pulling the blonde toward him. Naruto, look at me. The boy slowly looked up at him. Just because you become Chunin does not mean we won't be together. You two will still live here. Sakura is still allowed to stay whenever she wants to. We will still have missions together. We will still train together. You becoming a Chunin does not change the fact that we are a family. He looked at the other two. Nothing will change that. Can the Hokage make us leave? Sakura asked, her voice small in the large room. That's what he told Naruto, right? That he would make him leave? And you can't do anything. As important as Jounin Sensei rights are, the Hokage can override them if he sees fit. They were created by the first Hokage as a way to help the orphans in the village. Their Jounin Sensei was able to make sure no one mistreated them, took advantage of them, and the children could pay the village back by becoming ninja. Hashirama saw it as a win-win, even Madara agreed before he left. However, at the current time, Hiruzen was using it as a way to control Team 7. But Kakashi had a way around the rules. He can overrule my decisions as Jounin Sensei if he feels I am mistreating you kids. Or, in this case, to make us do what he wants us to do. However, we have a loophole. I only have Jounin Sensei rights while you are Genin. Sasuke cut Kakashi off. If we become Chunin, then he can't do anything. He looked across the table at each of his teammates. We can live wherever we want. Exactly. Kakashi winked at them. If he wants to throw his weight around, let him. Until then, we will train and keep our heads low. We will do our missions and not argue. We won't give him a reason to do anything. Deal. The three looked at each other before nodding. Okay. First, lunch. Then we train. He glanced at the weasel curled up in Sasuke's collar. We might have some meat for our weasel friend. Should I expect further communications between you and your brother? Obito hopped up on the rock, leaning against the warm surface. Some more crows flying about. His annoying alternate personality worked on many of the other Akatsuki members, but it didn't work on Itachi. The teen already knew who he was, had already seen his scarred face. Itachi quite liked this particular large outcrop. The sun hit it just enough to warm the stone, offsetting the chill inside the cave. It used to be his own area, one the other members didn't touch. Now, apparently, that was ruined. He slid his dark eyes over to the orange-masked man. Would you rather me write to Kakashi? There was a pause before Obito responded. The sassy teenager doesn't suit you, Itachi. I thought Fugaku trained that out of you. Leaning back against the warm stone, Itachi closed his eyes, refusing to let Obito get to him. He was feeling lighter since seeing his brother. It was like they had started over, wiped the slate clean, and had a tentative semblance of peace. Obito was not taking that away from him. Would you be opposed to me communicating with Sasuke? He felt his cousin shift beside him. I'd like to give him some direction on the Sharingan. Teach him how to use it properly. Did he awaken it? Good for him. Obito almost sounded like he was smiling. If that is all you're writing to him, then you won't mind me reading them. Itachi raised an eyebrow at him. After all, we are family. With his eyes still closed, Itachi shrugged. Fine. The truth was, Itachi found a better, secret, way to send messages to Kakashi. The weasels were a contract he had made long ago but did not often utilize. They were surprised he called on them now. This particular weasel, Tadao, was very adept in stealth, and very intelligent. He was the perfect hidden messenger. As for the crows, Obito could read those watered-down letters all he wanted. Nothing important would be sent through them. I have nothing to hide. One question I have. Just a small observation. When I send you for the Kyuubi hierarchy, will your brother be an issue? Will he attempt to stop you? Our mission comes before everything else, Itachi. I want to make sure your priorities are in order. The words felt heavy on his tongue, but Itachi told Obito what he wanted to hear. I will do anything I have to in order to bring the Kyuubi hierarchy to you. Good, Itachi. Striking up a relationship with the kid will go a long way. It will make it easier to bring him in. Obito slid off the rock. Can you imagine the guilt Kakashi will feel when he loses his precious genin? Maybe then he will understand. There was something Itachi didn't know. Something important happened between Obito and Kakashi. He made a mental note to ask Kakashi about it in his next letter. While digging through the fridge, Ino heard the front door open. She was expecting to see her father but instead saw dirty pink hair bobbing around the corner. Sakura had been with her team for the last couple of days, Ino had hardly seen her. Excitement boiled over as Ino bounded out of the kitchen and into the entranceway, wrapping her arms around a very dirty Sakura. Oh. Ino. I'm filthy. Sakura laughed, keeping her dirty hands far away from Ino, who looked freshly showered. I don't care. Ino smiled against her shoulder. I was so worried about you yesterday and last night and this morning, are you staying here tonight? She pulled back, pale eyes full of hope. Once bright eyes darkened. She is locked up, Ino. Naruto made the seal, said he made it pretty and deadly. But that old, angry man made me lock her up. I hate him. If Ino was surprised to hear Sakura talking about their Hokage like that, she didn't show it. Sakura thought she would get some reaction, at least. Instead, Ino nodded. The genin got together this morning. We want to get him overthrown, but we can't until after the Chunin exams. Even Guy Sensei's group came. Wait. You want to get him overthrown? Well, of course. After what he did to you, and then what he said to Naruto. He was cruel, Sakura. We can't let him get away with that. She took Sakura's hand and led her toward the stairs. Go take a shower, you smell. Then we can talk, deal. Sakura gave her a flat look. Sorry, you do. What were you doing today? When Inoichi came home, Ino and Sakura were sitting at the table, devouring a plate of cookies. Sakura's hair was still wet, hanging straighter than usual. They were both clad in their pajamas as they ate and giggled. The man had feared Sakura would be an inconsolable mess over her sword, but she seemed to be in good spirits, not just faking it for her best friend. The girls greeted him when he walked into the kitchen. Inoichi put a hand on Sakura's shoulder, pulling her into an awkward hug. "I am so proud of you." Her eyes shimmered at him. "You looked amazing out there." "You agree it was bullshit, right, Dad?" Ino piped up. It didn't matter how many times Inoichi told her not to swear, the girl shrugged it off and did it anyway. "He's abusing his power." With a sigh, Inoichi rounded the table and took a seat. "A lot is happening in the village right now. A lot of things have come to light now that Danzo is dead. Does that excuse what Sandaime did? Absolutely not. Hopefully, once all of this gets figured out, Sandaime will settle himself down. Hopefully. Figure out what?" With her elbow on the table, Ino rested her chin in her hand, batting her long eyelashes at her father. "Would you like some more help? More secrets to decode? Need me to sneak in somewhere?" Sakura leaned forward, wanting to hear the secrets, too. Inoichi feared he created two monsters. Taking a moment to steal a cookie, Inoichi weighed the pros and cons of getting the genin involved. He wasn't naive, he knew his daughter couldn't keep everything a secret. Especially when it involved anyone important to her. Would it be so bad to use extra eyes and ears? Inoichi could see the frown forming on Shikaku's face, even without the man in front of him. With Sakura's big green eyes trained on him, knowing the hurt she faced the previous day, he couldn't say no. Not this time. First off, do not do anything that could get you hurt. Do you understand? Do not. He looked both girls in the eye until they nodded. Okay. Keep your eyes and ears open when you are out in the village. If you see Umbu clustered in one area or see them following someone, let either me, Kakashi, or Shikaku know. If they start to follow any of you, let us know immediately. We can do that, Dad. Ino smiled. But, can we ask you some questions? Another cookie made its way to Inoichi's mouth. If I can answer it, I will. Did anyone ever find Danzo's arm? Inoichi choked on the cookie. How did you know about that? We didn't tell anybody. Sakura had brought him a drink to wash the crumbs down. The girls looked at each other, silently agreeing on how much to tell. Well, we overheard some jounin whispering during the funeral. They said he was missing his arm and one eye, but they couldn't be found. As she talked, Ino slowly pulled the plate of cookies away from her father. He'd had enough for one night. I mean, how do you lose an arm, Dad? If it was removed, did he bleed out? Sakura had her knees on the chair, leaning over the table. If the bleeding isn't stopped right away, a person would bleed out in as little as 5 minutes. Quicker if he's sustained any other serious injuries before or during. There was a moment where Inoichi forgot his two girls had been training at the hospital. He'd forgotten they'd both read through Lady Tsunade's book at least 3 times, had multiple pages bookmarked, and notes on sticky paper littered throughout. Of course, they would know that information. Yes. He bled out. He felt a headache beginning. Okay, enough for tonight. Get to bed. They both began protesting. No, you've had enough confidential information for the night. Go to bed. The bedroom always smelled like lavender. Sakura missed that smell when sleeping over at the boys' house. She missed the smell of flowers throughout the house, the smell of lavender in Ino's bedroom, the smell of floral body wash and shampoo. Another thing she missed was the feel of Ino's arms wrapped around her tightly and the soft whispers in the dark. Sakura never would have imagined she loved being the little spoon. But the feeling of being cared for and loved was intoxicating. It was a drug all its own and Sakura was addicted. Ino. The only light in the room came from the moonlight outside. You're amazing. The low giggle Ino let out could be felt rumbling through Sakura's back. Smiling, she let exhaustion overtake her. Setting the weasel onto the dewy grass, Suzuki gave his new friend a final scratch behind the ears. With his and Kakashi's letters tucked away in the storage seal on his furry belly, it was time for the little guy to go back to Ataki. With a twitch of his head and a chirping sound, the weasel acted as if he was waiting for orders. Travel safe. Make it back to Itaki in one piece. Sasuke smiled. With one final trill, the weasel turned and scampered by into the woods. Naruto waited for him on the porch, hands on the railing as he watched the small mammal disappear between the trees and brush. The light from inside illuminated Naruto, making him a silhouette as he stood there. For a moment, Sasuke stopped and stared. This kid, the one who was last in everything, was always loud and annoying and causing trouble, had become Sasuke's best friend. He had become important to Sasuke. How or when it happened was beyond him, maybe that first night they slept beside each other on the floor or the first night they shared a bed, but he'd been given another chance to be happy. You okay, Sasuke? The silhouette of Naruto tilted his head. You're kind of staring. He nodded before stepping back on the porch. We need a porch light. Considering it, Naruto nodded. Yeah, that would be good. Before Sasuke could step past him, Naruto tentatively wrapped a hand around his wrist. Do you think we could just sit here for a minute? Just sit. Sasuke let himself be led to the swing. The night air had a chill to it, but not enough that he was cold. Without the bright lights of Konoha's streets, the stars shined bright in the dark sky. The moon was full, hanging above the trees as if perched on top. With it being so quiet there, wildlife felt safe to come out at night, rabbits hopping through the yard, a raccoon playing in the brush, a deer peeking his antlers into the clearing. It was beautiful. It was everything the two boys had missed out on for years. Hey, do you remember when Iruka-sensei told us about Yondaime? He said that he could do this thing with the Kunao and was really fast. Hiraishin. Sasuke nodded. You could probably ask Kakashi about it. Your father was his sensei. Naruto shrugged. Why? There was a pause where Naruto's hand gripped Sasuke's wrist a little tighter. I don't have anything passed down, you know? I know the Rasengan was my dad's, but other people can do it, too. I want something that only me and my dad could do. Does that make sense? Yeah. The Uchiha was a very traditional clan. Passing clan jutsu through generations was important, something that was encouraged. Teaching the next generation how to properly use the Sharingan was of utmost importance. It kept the line clear, untainted. There were several unique manifestations, unique alterations, that happened naturally. Obito's Kamui, Shisui's Kota Amatsukami, Itachi's Tsukuyomi, and Amaterasu were among the top unique forms the Sharingan took. Sasuke wondered which, if any, he might receive once mastering his own. Angling himself to the side, Sasuke looked at Naruto. It made sense that Naruto would want something that only he and his father could do. The Rasengan, according to Kakashi, is able to be produced by, now, 4 people. It ceased to be just something between father and son. I think that's a great idea. Maybe then you can keep up with me. Bright blue eyes blinked before Naruto punched Sasuke's shoulder. Asshole. I'm going to be the Orange Flash. You'll have to keep up with me. The annoying Orange Flash? Oh, I can't wait. Sasuke pushed himself off the swing before Naruto could hit him again. Instead, Naruto chased him in the house before jumping on Sasuke's back. Get off, loser. Kakashi looked up from his notebook, raising an eyebrow at their antics. Naruto had his arms and legs wrapped around Sasuke from behind, clinging like a monkey. Sasuke was trying everything to knock the boy loose, eventually fighting dirty and biting Naruto's arm. The boy yelped as he fell to the floor. Sasuke. That's cheating. There was no heat to his words, just the happiness that comes from seeing his two boys content. Sensei. Naruto jumped to his feet, tripping over them on his way to the couch. Do you know how to do that thing Dad could do? His yellow flash thing. He saw Sasuke roll his eyes before flopping on the chair. Kakashi looked at the wide-eyed awe on Naruto's face, the hope dangling there. Hiraishin. No, sorry. It was like the light behind Naruto's eyes was huffed out. I know it was space-time ninjutsu that was actually created by the second Hokage. Your dad just perfected it. I don't see why you can't make it your own, though. Just because it's not the same thing your dad did, that doesn't make it any less amazing. Figure it out your way. Naruto shrugged, unconvinced. What's wrong? You already know one jutsu your dad created. He wants one that is just him and his father. Sasuke supplied, picking at his nails. Other people know the Rasengan. Well, that did make sense. Go get your scroll, Naruto. Isn't one of your father's kunai in there? Once Naruto had grabbed it, the three of them spread the contents of Minato's box on the kitchen table. The three-pronged kunai in his Fuinjutsu book took center stage as the rest was pushed off to the side. Okay, I'll explain what I know. The rest is up to you. Naruto nodded, turning the kunai in his hand. That seal, the technique formula, is unique to him. Anything he places his seal on, whether it be a person or an object, he can teleport to. It's permanent. Even after death, the seal remains. Me, Rin, and Obito all had one. Your mother did, also. I think there were a few buildings around Konoha he marked, too. And then there were these kunai. He had a ton of them, all bearing the same formula. Anywhere they landed, or even in midair, Minato-sensei could teleport to them. Kakashi tapped the book. If he wrote it anywhere, it would be in here. But, Naruto, remember, your father was a Fuinjutsu master. If you can't do them, yet, it's okay. Give yourself time. The formula his father used won't work for him. Sasuke had a basic understanding of Fuinjutsu, just from listening to Naruto and reading Kakashi's books on it. Some of it didn't make sense. It was all trial and error and hoping you accounted for all the variables. He was surprised Naruto had the patience to work through them. Kakashi shook his head. The formula has to be unique to you. He reached over and ruffled Naruto's hair. If there is one thing you're good at, it's being unique. Smiling, he relished in Naruto's giggle. Hours later, when Kakashi had finished his rounds for the night, he peeked into Naruto's bedroom. As per usual, Sasuke was laying on his back with Naruto curled tight against him. They looked so innocent, so much like children, that it gave Kakashi pause. Anyone on the outside could look at those boys and not believe the pain and horror they'd lived through, wouldn't believe that those two boys could kill with their bare hands. It was a sobering thought, but a painful reality. Kakashi went to bed with a heavy heart and a silent prayer everything he was doing correctly. A hope he was making everything better. With a sickening thud, a deceased body was dropped on the slab of metal. It would need drained, prepped, and sealed away for future experiments. Although why this body would be of any use, now, the medic didn't know. He pulled a thick needle from the drawer, sliding it into the right carotid artery. A large machine was pulled close to the table and connected to the needle. The strong-smelling embalming fluid that he began pouring into the machine made his eyes water. A flick of a switch and the machine kicked on, pushing the fluid inside and what blood was left out. The iron-rich smell of blood mixed with the chemical smell of formaldehyde was an overpowering combination. The machine would take time, and a dead body wasn't going anywhere, so the medic left the room. It had already been on ice for several days. If the body wasn't dead to begin with, it surely was now. A yell from the hallway could be heard as the medic shut the door behind him. The long, dark corridor would be intimidating to anyone not accustomed to it. His eyes had long since adjusted to the dim lights. He felt a hint of excitement as he walked down the corridor. Something big was happening, something his master had been waiting for. The time was right. Another yell and the medic picked up his steps. The heavy double doors rattled as he pushed them open. The hinges were loose. He made a mental note to have them fixed. Yes, sir. We leave tomorrow. Have everything packed and ready. The long, dark hair was covering the man's face, but a smile could be seen, something twisted and sinister. I have to make sure they are doing everything correctly. Yes, sir. The medic bowed. The body is being prepped currently. The man nodded. Good, good. When you are finished with that, make sure the boy's room is ready for him. I want no surprises. I've waited quite long enough. Before the door could be shut, the man looked up from his scroll. And, Kabuto, keep in mind we cannot harm the Jinchuriki. We may need to remind Suna of that, also. Yes, Lord Orochimaru. Chapter 24, Caffeine. It was early in the morning when Shikaku and Inoichi knocked at the door. Kakashi opened it with a yawn and sleep-messed hair. "Can I help you? We have a theory, we would like to bounce it off of you. Asuma is on his way, but we want your opinion first." Shikaku, with his hands in his pockets, looked like he hadn't slept all night. Inoichi looked the same with the added bonus of chakra exhaustion. Kakashi stepped back, ushering the two inside. "The privacy seals are always active, so talk away." When Shikaku raised an eyebrow, Kakashi smirked. Naruto picked up Fuinjutsu quickly. He's quite proficient. Well, Shikaku took a seat at the kitchen table. Inoichi flopped in another seat, head on the table. "We've been at this all night, as you can tell. This is going to sound far-fetched, but humor us." The gray hair bounced as Kakashi nodded. He took a seat after starting a pot of coffee. "We think that Danzo had access to a Sharingan. If there was an award for acting, Kakashi should win." "How? Did he steal it?" "There was something to be said for being able to think on your feet, to be able to ad-lib. I can't see any Uchiha offering it to him." That was the conclusion we came to. From his position with his face flat against the table, Inoichi sighed. "I have spent all night inside one of those unmarked Umbu's head. Mental block after mental block, the only genjutsu capable of making mental blocks that strong has to be an Uchiha. As proficient as Kurane is, or any other genjutsu user is, none of them compare to the Uchiha." Shikaku agreed. "They are a brand of powerful all their own." Kakashi nodded in agreement. "The strongest genjutsu he's ever come across came from an Uchiha. Shisui to be exact. Didn't Atakase Danzo had Shisui's eye? The strongest genjutsu the Uchiha have is the Kato Amatsukami, but that belonged to Shisui. Are you thinking?" Inoichi lifted his face from the table. "And, that is a mess all of its own. The Uchiha files in the archive show that Shisui's body never had a write-up. No autopsy. No pictures." He glanced over at Shikaku. "It's like they were redacted." That did actually surprise Kakashi. He wasn't privy to everything written in the files. Sasuke had yet to open them and Kakashi didn't take a good read through them prior. He didn't want to have to push the boy, but his hand may be forced. "I know Danzo had a hand in everything, but would he have enough clout to hide the death of an Uchiha? The clan took care of their own. That was our thought, too." Long fingers tapped on the table as Shikaku leaned his head back. "This is all such a mess. I didn't want something so troubling right before the exams. Shikamaru is actually training, he's actually excited about them." A smirk played on Kakashi's face. Naruto had put a fire under the boy and seeing Koji get stronger only fanned it. Shikamaru always had the potential, but never the drive. Not until Asuma died and the boy took up his mantle. It was great to see him wanting to succeed. "Shikamaru has been working hard." Kakashi agreed. "More driven than you were, Shikaku." A snort was heard from Shikaku's side of the table. Inoichi's shoulders shook from trying to hold in his laughter. "Both of you can kiss my ass. Can we get back on track?" "You brought it up." Inoichi propped his chin on his hand. "Okay, so what do we know?" "Danzo died, bleeding out, with an arm and an eye missing. He had an entire platoon of trained Umbu that we now have to find and capture. They are emotionless machines, just to remind everyone. We are finding out exactly what all Danzo had his hands into, and none of it is pretty. The kin we opened is full of dead, molding worms." Shikaku wrinkled his nose. "That is disgusting." There was a knock at the door. Kakashi led Asuma in, motioning him over to the table. "Coffee is done." "Thank the powers that be," Inoichi praised. "Just straight black. Mainline it into my veins." "Wow." Asuma slid into the open seat. "What did I walk into?" Kakashi sat everyone's cups in the middle of the table. "A clusterfuck." "That's what you walked into." Half of Inoichi's coffee was gone in one gulp. It was refilled soon after. Kakashi just sat the pot in the middle of the table and, with one look at Inoichi, considered putting a straw in it. It was surprising to Kakashi that the man was standing at all. Physical and chakra exhaustion usually put people in bed for days. Asuma had much the same thought as he exchanged glances with Kakashi. You okay, Inoichi? Worry seeped into Asuma's voice. You look dead on your feet. The blonde leaned back in his seat, bags prominent under his eyes. I took a couple of soldier pills. I'm good for a couple more hours, then I'll crash. He waved the concern off. Honestly, I'm good. Ino might not think so. Inoichi leveled a half-hearted glare at Shikaku. Wait until she finds out you left last night. You made sure those girls went to bed, and then you went back to work. She will be livid. Kakashi glanced at Asuma, both men knowing how motherly Ino can be. Oh, you are in trouble now. Asuma sing-songed. You do realize I'm the adult, right? I'm not afraid of my own daughter. There was a long pause in which Asuma kept flicking his gaze behind Inoichi as if someone was standing there. Inoichi's eyes went wide as he whipped around, expecting to see Ino standing there. There was no one. It was all a joke. Inoichi could have killed him. I hate you. The men began laughing. Why are we friends? Shikaku poured himself another cup of coffee. Well, Asuma, let's read you in on the current events. Keep an open mind, all right. Asuma nodded, sitting forward in his seat. The room went serious again. It started when an unmarked Umbu began dropping confidential scrolls that all traced back to Danzo. One was an assassination order, but we didn't arrive in time to stop it. Before we could get everything together and make a move, Danzo was murdered. One of the scrolls talked about a safe under Danzo's desk, gave us the code. The code was real. The safe was full of unsanctioned missions, knowledge Danzo shouldn't have, and a record of every single seedy person he has in his pocket. You already know about the parts missing from Danzo. Asuma nodded. Okay, well, we still have no idea where they are. We have 7 unmarked Umbu in TNI that is refusing to talk. When I try to get in and poke around, I'm met by the strongest mental blocks I've ever seen. I don't know anyone in the village with that kind of genjutsu power. Not anymore, anyway. Asuma tilted his head, looking at Inoichi confused. What do you mean? Who would have that kind of genjutsu power? An Uchiha. Inoichi began rubbing his temples. See our issue? The only one who could do it is Itachi, and he's not around. Sasuke, as strong as Kakashi is making him, isn't at that level yet. So, who does that leave us with? There was a deafening silence in the room. Kakashi waited, wanting Asuma to make the connection himself, not wanting to make it seem like he knew too much. He flared out his senses, trying to find his boys. They were still in Naruto's bedroom, but they were awake. Those boys were listening in, eavesdropping on a conversation way above their pay grade. As long as they stayed in the bedroom, Kakashi wouldn't make a big deal out of it. Are you trying to tell me that Danzo had a Sharingan? Is that what you're getting at? Asuma looked bewildered like he wasn't believing the words coming out of his own mouth. That's what I'm supposed to keep an open mind about? Where would he get one? Shrugging, Shikaku sat back in the chair, crossing his arms. That's the question, isn't it? I can't see any Uchiha just handing him one. They always kept that Dojutsu closely guarded, and for good reason. So, I guess the real question is, where did Danzo steal one from? Does Dad know? With an unfocused gaze, Asuma stared ahead. Kakashi could only imagine what was going through his head. This was Asuma's father they were talking about. This wasn't some random ninja from a random village, this was personal. If he knew. That's a big if, though, Kakashi interjected. He hid a lot of things from your father. I'm not sure if he would have shared something that illegal, that immoral, with him, would he? Oh, how Kakashi loved planting seeds of doubt in people's heads. Just giving them the option of Sandaime knowing that Danzo had a Sharingan would open up other options, like him being part of the Uchiha massacre. Discrediting Sandaime was almost as good as getting the man overthrown. Almost. There was a slight thud as Inoichi's elbow slid off the table. He was dead on his feet. They needed to finish this conversation soon, or the man was going to pass out. Whether he knew or not, it's all moot unless we can prove Danzo had the eye. When we got to the office, the Umbu were running ragged. I think they hit it, but none of them are talking. He punctuated that with a yawn. Inoichi, go to Sakura's room and sleep. Kakashi motioned back the hall. If Ino sees you looking like that, you will never live it down. When Inoichi tried to protest, Kakashi just grabbed the man's arm and pulled him up. You're not too manly to sleep under a pink blanket. Get in there. When no one stopped him, Inoichi just sighed and slumped his way to the room. They were pretty sure he would be out before his head hit the pillow. We can't let him keep doing that. He was in that Umbu's head for hours. Mental block after mental block, all as strong as the last. No one could have created them other than a Sharingan. Shikako looked nearly as tired as Inoichi did, but he was hiding his better. If we're right, then there is an Uchiha whose death isn't what it seems. With his mind spinning, trying to figure out how to steer the men toward Shisui without making them question his own knowledge, Kakashi poured himself another cup of coffee. Whatever his next step was, he would have to tread lightly, just sow the seeds. The massacre happened so quickly. Were all of those bodies properly accounted for? Shikako had a curious look on his face. With all the chaos that caused, it would have been easy for Danzo's Umbu to sneak in and steal. As per Uchiha tradition, those bodies were burned. No way of knowing for sure, now. Slender fingers stroked his goatee as Shikako thought. Kakashi had a point, it would be easy for Danzo to order the eyes taken. And, with the bodies burnt, there would be no proof after the fact. Surely there were autopsies done on the bodies. Then, after a beat, he added, which Uchiha had the strongest genjutsu? I know Itachi was up there, but he wasn't the strongest, was he? Kakashi shook his head. Shisui had the strongest. The Koda Amatsukami is a mind-controlling genjutsu. Powerful, yet subtle. Those under the genjutsu didn't know they were being manipulated. They felt as if it was their own free will. It was also so powerful, the cooldown time could take a decade. If Danzo would want any manifestation of the Sharingan, I'd bet that's the one he'd pick. Asuma's coffee cup clinked against the tabletop. Did he die in the massacre? Suicide. The coffee cup in front of Shikako was half empty, the coffee has long gone cold. Well, that's what we were told, anyway. His gray eyes flickered up to Kakashi's. What if that's not quite true? What if it was made to look like a suicide? The thing was, Kakashi didn't know the full story of Shisui. He knew that Itachi and Shisui were close, a brother-like bond that was easy to tease the boy about during missions. Itachi was sad after the death, withdrawn and lost in his grief. The young boy, barely older than the boys he currently housed, would be easily manipulated while trapped in that hell. But what of his death? Itachi had said Danzo had Shisui's eye, did he have a part in ending that kid's life? If I were Danzo, the disgusting man he was, that would be the jujutsu to get. What you're thinking, Shikako, is very likely. He couldn't wait for his little weasel friend to return. He had many questions to ask Itachi. Please tell me Dad doesn't know about any of this. With wide eyes, Asuma looked between Kakashi and Shikako. Tell me my own father didn't sanction a massacre. Biting his tongue so hard he tasted blood, Kakashi forced himself to stay silent. He saw it all in Obito's head before the man was decimated by Kaguya. Hiruzen knew of the unrest but wasn't aware Danzo sanctioned the mission. Afterward, all Danzo got was a slap on the wrist, but that was neither here nor there. What Asuma was asking, Kakashi couldn't give a straight answer to. He shouldn't know the answer. Instead, he fought to keep quiet. We all hope not. Shikako shook his head. I'm not sure what the facts are pointing to, but we need more information. A lot more information. He pushed himself off the chair, swaying slightly in fatigue. I need to go home and actually sleep. I'll see what I can do about getting the Uchiha files, see which autopsies we actually do have access to. And I'll pull the file on Shisui while I'm at it. But, all that will have to wait until I actually sleep. After Asuma left with Shikako, if only to make sure the man didn't pass out on his way home, Kakashi checked on Inoichi. The man was face down, snoring loudly into Sakura's pillow. Deciding he was sufficiently asleep, Kakashi figured he'd let the boys air their questions. They shouldn't be overheard. All right, boys. Kakashi kept his voice low as he opened the door. They were both sitting on their knees, waiting for him. He knew they were awake, they were listening, and Kakashi didn't do anything to stop it. Ask your questions, but keep your voices low. Inoichi is sleeping next door. They both began asking questions at the same time, talking over each other while trying to keep the volume down. Kakashi tried not to laugh. Instead, he held up a hand and quieted them down. He pointed at Naruto first. Hey. Hey. Did the old man know? Did he let it happen? Naruto was practically vibrating. If he did, he shouldn't be Hokage, sensei. Itachi said Danzo had Shisui's eye. Sasuke's eyes were dark, brows drew down. He was a mix between angry and confused. Did he kill Shisui? Did he make it look like a suicide? Pulling the chair from Naruto's desk over toward the bed, Kakashi took a seat. This was going to be a long conversation, he was sure. We don't know how much Sandaime knows. The more they dig into Danzo's past, the more unsanctioned missions they are finding. There is a high chance the Hokage did not know. It could have been all Danzo manipulating Itachi. When we see Itachi again, we will ask him. As far as Shisui, that's another thing we need to talk to your brother about. What did Itachi do with that eye he took? Naruto wrinkled his nose. He's not walking around with it in his pocket, right? You. Kakashi laughed. If he made a storage seal on the weasel, then he could make a storage scroll, right? Maybe it's in there. Kakashi shrugged. I never thought to ask him. I'm sure he put it somewhere safe. Shisui was Itachi's best friend. He would definitely take care of it. Will he come back? Feeling unsure, Sasuke began picking at the blanket. He said he would, but dash. He will come back. Kakashi gripped Sasuke's shoulder. I'm pretty sure he's as excited to see you as you are to see him. It might not be right away, but I'm sure he will. He watched as Naruto reached over, wrapping his hand around Sasuke's wrist. Come on. Let's get some breakfast. Then we can gather up Sakura and do some missions. We have to be good little ninja until the Chunin exams, remember? With his head pounding, Itachi fought to stay upright. He and Kisame were sent on an intelligence-gathering mission, but Kisame was pulling all the weight. The large man kept throwing worried looks in Itachi's direction as the teen staggered along the path. Okay. Kisame stopped in his tracks. You need to sit down, kid. What is going on? Are you sick? Even shaking his head was a forceful act. It made his head spin, his vision blur. It was the beginning of a migraine, Itachi knew it. He'd been trying to fight it off all day but to no avail. But Itachi couldn't be weak in front of the Akatsuki, not with Zetsu and Obito constantly watching. I'm fine. Let's go. Even ninja get sick, Itachi. Kisame stood with his arms crossed, same hata strapped to his back. There's no shame in it. If you're sick, we can find an inn. Contrary to my appearance, I'm actually decent in hiding out. Again, Itachi tried to shake his head, but it made the world spin faster. Kisame caught him before he fell. Yeah, executive decision. We're finding an inn. It took half an hour, but Kisame found Itachi a room. The teen collapsed in the bed, arm over his eyes to block out the light. Kisame disappeared for a while but returned with medicine for a headache. After making sure Itachi took it, Kisame closed the blinds and left again. Taking the act of kindness for what it was, Itachi just rolled over and closed his eyes. When he awoke, the room was black. Although still dizzy, his head wasn't pounding. He still felt like he was weak. It was his bladder that woke the teen, so he climbed out of bed to find the restroom. When he returned to the room, Kisame was standing in the doorway. Hey, you're still alive. Itachi slowly nodded, still holding on to the wall to stay upright. I'll be good to go soon. With a tilt to his head, Kisame looked Itachi up and down. You can't stand up straight and you want to take off in the middle of the night? No. Go back to bed. We'll start out tomorrow morning if you can. Don't worry about the mission. I got what we came for. Just rest. He'd known Kisame since he joined the Akatsuki. Although they did not get along at first, an understanding was formed between the two. Itaka would even consider the blue man a friend. Kisame was a decent man once you got past the brawn and tough attitude. Disillusioned, but decent. He believed in the pure world Obito rambled on and on about, even though Itaka wasn't sold on it. But that didn't stop them from forming some sort of an alliance with each other. Itaka wasn't used to being vulnerable around anyone, yet here he was. Kisame was right. Itaka would be no use in a battle in his current state. He should go back to bed. Before crossing the threshold, he turned to his partner. "Thank you, Kisame." As he crawled back in bed, Itaka missed the surprised look on the blue man's face. Every clan had either books or scrolls dedicated to documenting their jutsu. From the beginner to the forbidden, they were all chronicled, all ready to be passed on to the next generation. It was the job of the clan head to distribute them out, teach those who showed promise and skill. In Shikamaru's case, his father was head of their clan. His way of passing them down was to drop the books and scrolls on the kitchen table before going to work. That was 2 weeks ago. Shikamaru read them all in a night, picking out the specific ones he wanted to learn, and the ones that weren't as important to him. On a desk in his bedroom, there were currently 3 scrolls rolled out and 1 leather-bound book open to the middle pages. The most intriguing one was an S-rank jutsu called Shadow Walking. Just as the name implies, it would allow him to hide and move through the shadows. It required a large reserve of chakra to keep the jutsu active, but Team 7 had shown them all the chakra reserve meditation. His was steadily growing. Standing behind the house, Shikamaru formed the hand signs before stepping into the large shadow the building caused. The world around him looked distorted, wavy, and hazy. He felt weightless as if he was floating. But was he entirely hidden? "Shikamaru." Koji's voice sounded out. He led the boy round the back of the house, using it as a test to see how well hidden he actually was. When Koji turned to look, his eyes widened and he jumped. Your head is floating." Cursing, Shikamaru stepped out of the shadow. "Still not enough. I'm supposed to be entirely hidden. Learning an S-class jutsu was troublesome. How did the rest of my body look? Was it hidden?" "Kind of. It looked all see-through and wavy." Koji moved his hand, trying to mimic the wavy motion. "Like that?" Shikamaru shrugged, putting his hands in his pockets. "Are you busy? Can you help me?" The lazy boy nodded. "Dad handed me our clan book. Said Shikaku and Inoichi were talking about how strong we were getting. He thinks I can do the multi-size technique. I think he's going to show me later, but I want to practice. I want to prove him right." Taking the book in his hands, Shikamaru quickly read over the jutsu. It seemed easy enough. The only problem was the calories it would consume and the strain on the body. As far as jutsu go, they should be able to get a head start on it, at the very least. "Yeah, sure. Let's go to the training ground. Mom will be mad if we destroy anything here." As the two walked toward the training field they usually use, they saw Lee walking on his hands on a stone wall. Tenten was sitting on a bench, twirling a kunao around her finger. With his perpetual frown, Niji stood with his arms crossed. It was the ninja tool-wielding girl who saw them first. "Hello Shikamaru, Koji." She waved. "What are you two up to today?" Koji waved the book in his hand. "Family jutsu learning. How about you?" The boy had become much more confident since training with Sasuke. It wasn't out of character for him to reach out first. He did it more often than not. Shikamaru was very proud of him. "Waiting for our sensei." Tenten rolled her eyes. He saw his eternal rival and wanted to challenge him to something. "Left us here, just waiting for him. He never did say what we were doing today." She looked over at Niji, who shrugged. Jumping off the stone wall in a neat flip, Lee gave Koji a thumbs up. "We could come with you. We can help you train, Koji. Your taijutsu skills have impressed me. It would make me happy to help you get stronger." He turned to his team. "Right. Where did you learn that?" Niji asked. The Hyuga didn't look over his dramatic loss that night. "Akimikas don't fight like that." A smirk played on Koji's face. "We genin have been training together. All of us picked up a mix of skills, now." When Niji's frown deepened, Koji shrugged. Mine is a mix of Akimichi and Uchiha styles, right now. You all can come, too. Shikamaru drawled out. I think Sakura would love someone who will talk swords with her. Just, don't mention hers. It's a sore subject right now. Lee gave a wide smile and a thumbs up. We would love to. As Lee and Tenten joined Koji and Shikamaru, striking up a conversation, Niji brooded behind them. He was coming along, but he didn't have to like it. The loss he suffered against Koji still thrummed under his skin. He was just waiting for Hayashi to find out. It would be another thing for his uncle to hold against him as if the man needed anything else. Without her pink-stitched halter, Sakura felt naked, vulnerable. There was no comforting weight on her back, no bouncing as she walked. Instead, all she had was her tool pouch to fight with. Naruto tried to take her mind off of it by making stupid jokes. It worked for a while, especially while doing the mind-numbing missions. Sandaime wasn't in the mission room for the first mission. However, he was for the second. It took everything in Sakura to hold her tongue and keep her head down. Kakashi stood close to her, comforting hand on her shoulder. The team and the man never spoke, focusing on Iruka instead. Watching Naruto closely, knowing the boy didn't have the best handle of controlling impulses, Kakashi was pleasantly surprised at how behaved his boy was. He never once looked at the Hokage, never once acknowledged the man was there. There was surprise on his face when he entered the room and saw the old man sitting there, but he hid it quickly. How was the mission, kids? Iruka asked, taking the form that marked the mission complete. That's your second one today. Shrugging, Naruto kept his eyes on Iruka. It was okay. Those people picked an ugly color to paint their fence. Sakura giggled and nodded. He held up his arm where a splotch of the green paint dropped on him. See? Looks like steamed broccoli. How would you know? Iruka laughed. You won't eat vegetables. I tried for years. Because they looked like this. Naruto pointed at the paint splotch. Feed me something that doesn't look gross. Sasuke hid a smirk in his shirt collar. I ate that spicy stuff you made. It had vegetables in it. There was a pause where everyone looked between Iruka and Naruto. Stir fry. Iruka scratched his cheek. Yeah, you did eat that. Huh. Well, I stand corrected, then. He glanced up at Kakashi. So, are you taking another mission? Kakashi shook his head. We need to get some training in, and all this talk about food is making me hungry. There was some noise as a couple of Chiryunin stepped into the room. Besides, you've got other things to do. We'll see you tomorrow. He gave a wave before ushering his kids out the door. Once outside, Sasuke crossed his arms and frowned. He just stared at us. He flipped his hair out of his eyes. Like he was waiting for us to do something. What did he want us to do? Cause a scene. Kakashi pat him on the head. Yell at him. The fact that you didn't shows how mature you kids are. I'm very proud. Then, as an afterthought, Kakashi brushed the bangs from Sasuke's face. You kids need haircuts. Maybe we can do that later. When Kakashi was on his own Genin team, Minato-sensei took them to a small restaurant none of them had been to before. They made popular foods from other lands, a way for the immigrating people and travelers to feel more at home. It was a way to celebrate successful missions or learning a new jutsu. He hadn't been there since Minato died, but all that talk about food was making Kakashi hungry for stir-fry. My eternal rival. A loud voice boomed from overhead. Team 7 looked up to see the sun blotted out by a tall man, hands on his hips. Today is the day. I will finally beat you in a challenge. There was a loud sigh from Kakashi. We were actually going to eat. Food can wait. A challenge cannot be denied. Before Kakashi could answer, Guy jumped off the roof, landing neatly in front of him. Nothing to say, my cool friend. Too scared you will lose in front of the Genin. The kids exchanged glances, clearly confused. Kakashi, however, had a plan. Okay, Guy. I accept your challenge. Loser has to buy stir-fry. After Guy readily agreed, Kakashi turned to his kids. Go get some training in. I'll let you know when Guy buys you something to eat. So sure of yourself, old friend. Guy let out a booming laugh. Come, let us race. Watching as the two Jounin raced off, the kids just shook their heads. Well, Sakura crossed her arms, what do you want to do now? She turned around to see the boys shrug. Fine. Let's go to the training field. Had Shikamaru and Koji not been around Naruto for a good chunk of their lives, they never would have believed anyone could have as much energy as Lee. The green-clad kid jumped around and fought with the finesse of a taijutsu master. Underneath his yellow leg warmers were weights that, when removed and dropped on the ground, caused a small crater. Then you saw his true speed. The boy was a green blur around the training field, only stopping long enough to attack. Their idea of training, two of Team 10 discovered, was Tenten raining down weapons while Lee dodged and darted through. The weapons were real, were sharp, were deadly. Niji stood in the middle of the weapon storm and spun around, blew chakra a dome around him. All the weapons clanged on the ground, bouncing off the dome. Koji and Shikamaru exchanged glances and wondered how, exactly, Niji lost to Koji. After another rain of weapons, a shout was heard from the path. You know Fuinjutsu, too. It was Naruto's unmistakable boisterous voice that carried over the clatter of metal. He broke from his team, racing forward to Tenten's side. Those aren't plain storage scrolls, are they? They look like space-time seals. How did you do that? There weren't many people in Konoha who dabbled in Fuinjutsu. Even then, the few that do seemed to focus on storage scrolls, fire papers, and smoke papers. The easy stuff. Tenten had a knack for time-space jutsu. She spent hours in the library, poring over every Fuinjutsu book, the handful that existed, the dusty shelves had to offer. She used 2 of her allowances to buy seal paper and seal ink, but it was worth every ryo. Every seal and scroll in her possession, she created it. Seeing someone else excited about Fuinjutsu made her just as excited. Yeah. They are. How did you know? I'm studying Fuinjutsu. Naruto pointed to the weapons all over the field. Regular storage scrolls wouldn't throw them out like that. They would have to be trapped in time-space to have the momentum, right? His hands were moving as he talked. Are the weapons cloned? Because you could double or triple how many come out if they clone themselves. Tenten looked as if someone gave her the best present. Really? How do I write that in? She grabbed Naruto's wrist and pulled him toward the bench. Scrolls were spread out, heads leaning over them. Naruto was in his element. Sakura, can you help me out? Shikamaru asked, rubbing his shoulder. He'd landed on it the wrong way after a hit from Lee. I don't think it's dislocated. Holding a green glowing hand over his shoulder, Sakura pursed her lips. No. You pulled a muscle. Easy fix. You can heal. Lee asked, bouncing on the balls of his feet. Beautiful and talented. Sakura's face turned a deep shade of red. Turning his attention to Sasuke, Lee gave the boy a thumbs up. I heard you are proficient at taijutsu. Koji has told me you trained him. It would make me very happy to spar with you. A giggle left Sakura as she focused on Shikamaru's shoulder. I'm not sure if proficient is the correct word. He was top of our academy class. If possible, Lee's eyes shined brighter. And now, with the Sharingan, he's even better. Lee put his leg weights back on, adjusting his yellow leg warmers around them. Yes. I am most excited for this. He took his pose, one arm behind him, one held out, palm up. Please, Sasuke. Let us spar. Rolling his shoulders, Sasuke dropped into his stance. As the others cleared the field, Koji gave him a smile. The boy knew how well Sasuke fought. He knew what Sasuke could do. As rough as his exterior is, Koji knew Sasuke was all bark and no bite. Underneath all of that, he was a good guy. Let's go. Sasuke had always been fast. It's what gave him the edge in the academy and in an actual battle. Even when he was younger, when Itachi still had time to teach him, people commented on his speed. It was one thing Sasuke held close to him as his thing. Lee blew that out of the water. There was just a green blur when Lee moved. Sasuke could barely make out where he was and when he would attack. The hits were quick, calculated, precise. He let the red bleed into his eyes, the Sharingan spinning to life, and it made Lee slightly easier to counter. But it still wasn't enough. With a kick to the gut, Sasuke was sent flying back. He took a second to be surprised before pushing himself up. The Sharingan glowed, taking in everything Lee was doing, every move he made. Although slightly slower, Sasuke began matching his movements. The next hit pushed Lee back, sandals sliding in the dirt. If nothing else, Sasuke was a fast learner. Very good, Sasuke. Lee gave him a thumbs up. That was fun. Would you like to go again? Breathing heavily, Sasuke nodded. Yes. One of the Sharingan's many perks was the ability to copy jutsu and movements. Sasuke committed everything the boy did to memory. He had the movements, the stance, the form, all he was missing was the speed. When they were both exhausted, sitting on the ground, Sasuke decided to swallow his pride. Can you teach me how to move that fast? Lee's smile was beaming. There was a stack of papers on Hiruzen's desk, all more damning than the last. The things Danzo was into were enough to make your skin crawl. The rumors he had heard for years, whispered in the shadows by Jounin and Umbu, were all true. It was like learning about Orochimaru all over again. The whispers of experiments his previous student had done, the things Hiruzen had tried to ignore, had all come to light, forcing his hand. Back then, he had a similar stack of papers on his desk, all glaringly obvious how much Hiruzen ignored. Danzo had lied to him. It was the least of his misdeeds, but the fact still stood. Root was not disbanded, just moved underground. Innocent orphans were scooped from the orphanage and raised as emotionless machines. The Umbu who were loyal to him had mental blocks the Yamanaka heir couldn't break through. There were files upon scrolls upon papers, all documenting the atrocities he caused. The paper Hiruzen was currently looking at showed communications between Danzo and Orochimaru, a dangerous combination. It talked about implants and DNA, but no specifics were mentioned. Could it have something to do with the missing arm and eye? His most trusted Umbu, Boar, and Goat, had put together a team. Their only mission was to find and capture the Umbu loyal to Danzo. The mission was slow going as the rogue Umbu were too well trained and had hiding places loyal Umbu didn't know about. In the past couple of days, they'd only managed to find 3. The odds were not in their favor. And then, on top of all of that, Hiruzen had guilt eating at him. Naruto did not deserve what was said to him. The fear in the boy's eyes was seared into Hiruzen's mind. He looked so small, so vulnerable. Pushing the paper away from him, Hiruzen stood up and looked out the window, staring out at the great stone faces. Minato and Kushina trusted their legacy, their child, to him. He took that trust and stomped it into the ground. Naruto grew up shunned, ignored, and neglected. People looked at him like he was the villain instead of a hero. And all Hiruzen did was tell Naruto to ignore them. The old man rested his forehead against the glass, feeling the warmth from the sun on his skin. Having immense knowledge of the ninja world didn't make you a good Hokage. Taking care of his people did. Could he say he did? Would that be written in the history books about him? The next generation of ninja was already losing respect for him, especially after his show at the training field. That little girl did something astonishing, she learned to use a sword taller than she is with flair. All Hiruzen did was tell her it had to be locked away. He sent an Umbu to make sure she complied. He practically spit on her accomplishment. And then there were the Uchiha. All the work Minato had put into the peace talks was undone in an instant. Danzo convinced both the advisors and Hiruzen that the Uchiha were dangerous. The Sharingan could control the Kyuubi, so alienating the clan was the best solution. All that did was harbor anger, cause the clan to find an alternate solution. Danzo ran free, pulling Itachi into the middle and putting too much on the young boy's shoulders. All it did was drive Itachi to do something unthinkable. Contrary to what people thought, Hiruzen did not know the massacre was going to happen. He was preparing for the coup that was imminent, not thinking that someone from the inside could be plotting something worse. When Itachi came to him that night, covered in the blood of his family and tears streaming down his face, Hiruzen did the only thing he could think of. Make the boy a scapegoat, protect Danzo, and put a manipulated child in the hands of a criminal organization. Hindsight is 20/20, Looking back on something makes it clearer, shows you more options. Hiruzen was a fool who tried to keep the peace in a world of hate. He let one of Konoha's most prominent clans be destroyed because he didn't want to upset the status quo. And now there was a 12-year-old boy who was paying the price. The face of the second Hokage, a man who believed no Uchiha could be saved, who believed they were all from a cursed clan, stared back at him. He told Hiruzen many times how the Uchiha clan was doomed from the beginning. The curse of hatred would eat them from the inside, turn them all evil. Itachi wasn't like the Uchiha Tobirama warned him about. Neither is Sasuke. Is it too late to right a horrible wrong? The owner of the inn watched warily as the large blue man at the corner table sipped at his sake. Something was off. Something made the hair on his neck stand on end. There was something familiar about the cloak he had draped over the back of the chair. What did those jounin say as they drank themselves into a stupor? Something about red clouds in a criminal organization? Surely not in his inn. Why would they have come to a small village in the middle of nowhere? The only thing this cluster of buildings had to offer was one gambling house. It was the only thing that brought any income into the village. Lady Tsunade. A young lady nearly tripped through the doors, a pig held tightly in her arms. You can't spend it all or we will have nowhere to sleep. The tall blonde flipped her hair and waved the lady off. Her heels clicked against the floor as she approached the bar. We need a room. 2 beds. The innkeeper was a red-blooded man. This blonde had some amazing breasts. He may have been staring. Oi. My eyes are up here, Lechaer. He tried to backpedal, but the woman just leveled him with a glare. I only have 1 room left. 2 single beds. Before handing the woman the key, he scratched the back of his neck. The room next door has a teenager in there. He's sick. Asked to only put quiet people beside him. The dark-haired lady raised an eyebrow. Sick how? He was stumbling around, all dizzy-like. Seemed like the light hurt his eyes. My wife had migraines, she acted a lot like that. He shrugged. Nothing contagious. Curiosity piqued, the 2 women began to walk up the stairs. The innkeeper let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. That woman was beautiful but terrifying. What do you think? Should we check on the kid? Shizun asked, holding Tuntun closer to her chest. He sounds pretty bad. Tsunade didn't answer at first, just gripped the handle of her briefcase tighter. No matter what Jiraiya said about her, she wasn't just a pretty face and large breasts. Jiraiya's words, not hers. She paid attention to her surroundings. She knew that the large blue man downstairs was part of the Akatsuki. The only teen she knew of in the Akatsuki was Uchiha Itachi. It stood to reason that he was the sick teen upstairs. It was a leap, but not that far of one. As soon as they turned the corner, they saw someone crumpled on the floor. Pale arms were trying to push him up, but they were shaking hard. Tsunade paused. On one hand, this could be Uchiha Itachi. On the other, he was just a kid struggling to stand up. Shizun was having much the same argument inside of her, swaying on her feet, not sure which to choose. Tsunade had been called a lot of things in her life. Cruel was never one of them. She sat her briefcase down and knelt in front of the kid. Uchiha Itachi. Instantly, he froze. Seems like you're in quite a predicament here. He tried to raise his head, tried to look at her, but all Tsunade saw was his eyes rolling back in his head before he fell forward. Well, shit. Chapter 25, The Right Medicine. Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. Shizun startled, squeezing Tuntun tighter. The clinking sound of a metal hilt being gripped, then the thud of a heavy object hitting the floor caused Tsunade to tilt her head slightly. Same had appeared in anticipation. I think you should leave, Lady Tsunade. Her green glowing hand never wavered, never moved from the teen's head. He's dying, Hoshigaki Kisame. It's slow, might take years, but it will kill him. I'm not sure how partners work in the Akatsuki, but if you care about him at all, you'll let me set back the clock. The silence in the hallway was deafening as Kisame weighed his options. On one hand, Itachi was sick. He needed healing, and there was no better healer than Senju Tsunade. On the other hand, this was a woman loyal to Konoha. Would she turn on him? Would she do something that would kill him later? Either way, Kisame would be taking a leap of faith. Why would you help him? I don't know, Tsunade answered honestly. I just couldn't let him suffer. She turned her head toward Kisame. Help me get him into his room. I started with his head, but his lungs need attention, also. I'd rather not let the boy lay on the floor. Kisame knew that the world is full of liars. There was a good chance Tsunade was included in them. This woman standing against the wall holding a pig was also a potential liar. He should slaughter them both, let Samehada taste their blood, but Itaka couldn't even stand. Kisame couldn't help the teen on his own. Tsunade was his only option at this time. Don't try anything. Kisame knew the threat was hollow. This woman was a Sunin, she could take him on easily. They would destroy this smallin without breaking a sweat. Was it worth the fight right now? Kisame loved a good fight, but Itaka taught him when to retreat. This was the time to retreat. Instead of arguing any further, Kisame picked Itaka up and took him into the room. Then, as the two women worked, he sat in the chair in the corner and waited. The pink pig tentatively trotted over to him, sniffing at his exposed toes, before returning to the dark-haired woman's side. The women hovered over Itaka, both using green glowing hands. He felt as if he sat there for years by the time Tsunade stood up straight, brushing back her blonde hair. She took a seat on the foot of the bed, looking right at Kisame, unafraid. He has the beginnings of a fatal chronic respiratory illness. The blood vessels would have broken down, filling his lungs with blood. I've stopped it, but he will deal with this coming back every few years for the rest of his life. As for his eyes, the Mangekyou is slowly eroding the chakra coils around them. Eventually, he will go blind, but that's not a surprise. The Uchiha have known it causes blindness. Okay. Kisame didn't know what to say, really. He was worried for Itaka but didn't know the kid that well. He was secretive, which Kisame didn't really mind. They had an understanding and it was working out fine. Kisame didn't know everything that happened in his past, and Itaka didn't know everything that happened in Kisame's past. But, with all that said, Itaka was still just a kid. So how long do I have to get him out of here before you call your Konoha buddies to come to get him? Oh, I'm not leaving him quite yet. I need to explain all of this to him when he wakes up. So, no, neither of you are going anywhere. Her honey eyes leveled the blue man with a glare. I would like to ask you a couple of questions, however. Snorting, Kisame leaned back against the wall. Do I have a choice? Or will you sick your pig on me? He earned a smirk from Tsunade. Ask away. What are you doing in this village? Did you come to kill someone? Recruit someone? Just wanted a quiet place to nap. She steepled her hands under her chin. And, don't lie to me. I will know. Kisame let out a heavy sigh before slipping his cloak off. Apparently, this was going to take a while. This particular village was the closest one to where Itaka nearly passed out. We had no business here other than getting him a place to lay down. Tsunade did not look convinced. I do not lie. I hate liars. Okay, then. Tsunade looked over at the other woman. Shizune, I need a drink. And some food. We're going to be here for a while. The training field was busy. It was as if everyone happened upon each other. Ino came jogging in, followed closely by Asuma. She was miffed that no one informed her of the impromptu training session. Shikamaru immediately accosted Asuma, explaining the shadow walking jutsu and how it wasn't quite working. Koji joined them, trying to get help on his own family jutsu. Naruto and Tenten never looked up from their seal, immersed in cloning each one of Tenten's ninja tools 100 times. They were dreaming a little too big. Sasuke had the basics of Lee's speed copied with the Sharingan, increasing his own in a short amount of time. Sakura tried to get Neji to loosen up, tried to spark a conversation. It was mostly one-sided. A few moments later, Kiba's loud voice boomed through the training field as Team 8 walked up. What's up, bitches? Kurane reached over and smacked him, chiding him for swearing. It's not swearing. They say it back home all the time. It's the way you're using it, Kiba. Kurane's eyebrows were drawn down. They are using it for a different reason and you know it. She looked up and saw Asuma, her eyes pleading. Could you teach this kid some manners? Whipping out his blades, Asuma coated them with chakra. Sure thing. Come here, Kiba. The boy's eyes were wide. Apparently talking isn't working for you, so let's try something different. No, Asuma-sensei. Talking is getting through just fine. Kiba didn't loosen up until Asuma tucked the blades away. He turned to Shino and Hinata before pulling Akamaru off of his head. My life just flashed before my eyes. The two Jounin watched as the kids attempted to mingle. Kiba inserted himself in between Ino and Sakura, throwing an arm around each of their necks. Both girls frowned and pushed him off. He laughed before heading over to Shikamaru and Koji. Ino turned around to find Hinata, who was hanging back, eyes flickering around the field. Sakura and Ino had made it a personal mission to make sure Hinata felt included. It started when they were all training at the new house. The girl barely moved, didn't talk, acted scared to death. She either clung to Kurane, Kiba, or Shino the entire time. Sakura knew what it was like to be scared and shy. She spent most of her childhood like that. So, with Ino in tow, they would march over to the shy girl and attempt to strike up a conversation. They did much the same today. Hinata, how do you put up with Kiba? He's annoying. Hinata's white eyes flickered up to Ino. Of course, Akamaru is adorable. He would almost make up for Kiba's annoying personality. There was a slight quirk of Hinata's lip, almost a smile. White eyes flickered over to Naruto and Tenten before returning to the ground. Sakura caught it, a smile on her face. So, Naruto's learning Fuinjutsu. It's his new favorite thing. And, apparently, Tenten is into it, too. I think Sasuke is jealous. He thinks Naruto found a new best friend. The brush nearly dropped from Naruto's hand. He wasn't that far away from the girls and could hear everything they were saying. The last part of Sakura's conversation drifted into his mind, breaking through the thought of symbols and variables. No, he's not. Naruto rolled his eyes. He's too busy with Lee. Oh, so you're jealous, too. Ino giggled. Ah, aren't you too adorable? The girl's giggling got worse when Naruto's face turned red. Tenten snickered, too, before returning to the seal. Anyway, what have you been learning, Hinata? Anything we can help you with? Kurane took this as the perfect opportunity to coax Hinata a little further. Maybe you girls could help her with some taijutsu? Sasuke can be, a little much. Yeah, he can be. If you're not used to him, he does come off rude. Sakura heard Naruto snort. We can definitely show you some stuff, Hinata. You know us. You know we won't laugh at you. She held out her hand, waiting for Hinata to make the first move. It was slow, tentative, but Hinata did reach her pale hand out. Come on. We will go over here where it's quiet. The three girls headed toward the trees where most of the shade was. Kurane watched them go with a soft look on her face. She turned to Shino. She should be okay, right? I believe so. Itachi awoke with a start. The last thing he remembered was one of the legendary Sannin saying his name. His eyes snapped open, Mangekyou spinning wildly. Vertigo immediately hit him, forcing his eyes closed again. Whoa, kid. I just healed your eyes. Don't undo it all right away. Healed him? No, that can't be right. Why would she heal him? Is he awake? Kisame's voice floated in the room. Everything sounded like it was coming through a tunnel. What's wrong with him? There was arguing. Tsunade defending herself while Kisame calls her a liar. Itachi tried again, slowly opening his eyes with the Sharingan off. That was easier. The room only spun slightly. There. Look. Tsunade sounded angry. Kisame's blue face and sharp teeth entered his view. Calling me a liar after I healed the kid. If Itachi didn't know any better, he would think Kisame looked relieved. Feeling better. He tried to give Kisame a slight nod. Good. You saw him, now shoo. Tsunade actually pushed the towering man away. I told you I got to ask him questions when he woke up. I never said you could be here. Get out. Surprising everyone, Kisame actually listened and walked out the door, muttering about needing a drink. Okay, Itake, let's set you up. She put a hand behind his head, gently supporting him. Once he was up, leaning back against the headboard, Tsunade took a seat on the edge of the bed. This is how this is going to work. I ask the questions, you answer the questions. No lies, no half-truths, no funny business. Understand? Itake's throat felt like sandpaper as he croaked out, I understand. Tsunade handed him a glass of water. It felt amazing against the cotton in his mouth and the sand in his throat. Thank you. Tsunade's eyes slightly widened. Did you just thank me? Huh. A rogue ninja with manners. Who would have thought? She took the, now empty, glass from his hand. Let me tell you why you feel like shit. You have a combination of things going on. First, let's talk about the Mangekyou. You need to stop using it as a first choice. You will go blind. It's not a secret, you know that's what happens. The chakra coils around your eyes are a mess. I healed what I could, reversed what damage I could, but you need to stop. She leveled him with a firm look. However, that's not the only cause of your migraines, dizziness, and passing out. Have you been feeling short of breath? Fatigue? Loss of stamina in battle? The teen slowly nodded. You have a chronic respiratory illness. It causes a lot of issues, but the main thing is your lungs slowly filling with blood. His eyes widened. Before you ask, yes, it is fatal. However, it can be kept in remission. How? Every few years, you will need another healing session. Basically, what my apprentice and I did was cauterize busted blood vessels around your lungs. It's an immunological disorder, your body is attacking itself. I can't stop that, but we can repair the damage and slow it down. With proper care, you can live out your life. The idea of dying, of leaving Sasuke alone after the tentative truce they made, was terrifying. The pink-haired girl in Konoha had said he was sick. She said he needed a better healer than her. I knew it was bad. I didn't know it was that bad. Itake was careful of keeping his hands in constant view. They rested gently on his lap, making sure the Sunin knew he was no threat at this time. How would I get this help? Can any healer do it? Most healers will treat your immediate symptoms, not look for what the underlying cause is. Honey eyes met dark ones. They will hand you medication and tell you that will heal it. It won't. When Itake just nodded, Tsunade decided it was time for the questions. Your friend said you have no business here. That you only came here for the inn. Was he lying? Shaking his head, Itake tried to flare out his senses, searching for Zetsu. If that abomination was skulking around, it would vastly change how much could be said. Who are you looking for? Nothing. He felt nothing. But the thing had to be out there. It had to be watching. Dropping his voice low, Itake whispered to the woman. We have a watcher. Not much I can say. Cocking her head toward the doorway, Tsunade asked, is he fiercely loyal? Was Kisame loyal to the organization? He'd been there for a while. What brought him to Obito was still up in the air, but Kisame didn't seem to take all of their rules to heart. By rights, Kisame should have left Itake in the woods and finished the mission. But he didn't. He brought Itake to an inn, made sure he was safe, completed the mission, and came back. Somehow Tsunade got mixed in, but Kisame allowed that, also. Maybe his view on the world could change. I don't think he's as loyal as he thinks he is. Guy may have lost the challenge, but he lost with all the grace of a newborn gazelle. Meaning Kakashi tripped him at the last second and sent Guy flipping into the training pole. But a deal is a deal, and Guy treated the entire group, teams 7, 8, and 10, to stir-fry. The stir-fry place was a small hole in the wall, but it did have one long table that sat in the back. 3 extra chairs needed to be pulled over, but they did manage to fit everyone in. The kids all slid into their places, all loud voices and excited noise, while the adults took up the ends. It wasn't exactly fair. Guy had only promised to feed his and Kakashi's teams, and Kakashi wasn't a complete asshole, so the bill was split evenly. While the adults talked, the kids were just as animated. The scroll Naruto and Tenten were working on didn't go exactly as planned. Tenten didn't have even half the chakra Naruto did, so the amount of cloned weapons couldn't exceed 20 each. Even that was pushing it. So, instead, Naruto showed her the chakra reserve meditation technique to help. She had a semi-completed scroll and a way to boost her reserves. Tenten was quite happy. Neji eventually eased up, letting Kiba coax him into a spar. It went exactly how Neji predicted, with Kiba on his back, but he had to admit it was fun. He'd never fought a nine-dog before and new experiences are always exciting. They got many digs in, snide remarks meant to burn, but all in all, it was enjoyable. Asuma had his attention torn between Shikamaru and Koji. The latter had a training session booked the next day with his father, which always stressed the boy out. Chauza had never pushed his son or talked down to him, but Koji was intimidated all the same. It was Koji's innate fear of disappointing anyone that fuels it. Just having the ability to slightly grow one limb made the boy happy enough, gave him enough confidence, to face his father. Shikamaru only needed a push in the right direction. He picked an S-rank ninjutsu that few Nara could accomplish, and the boy wanted to learn it before the Chunin exams. His laziest student picked the most ambitious goal, and he was almost there. His problem was the chakra control. The wavy look he was achieving was his control wavering. That, however, was an easy fix. All he had to do was stop slacking on his chakra control exercises. He could do that. Shino had wandered over to see Hinata training and ended up in a deep conversation with Sakura about his insects. She marveled over their food source and how they are housed inside of him. Shino answered a lot of questions before allowing a few to crawl over Sakura's hand. It surprised the boy Sakura wasn't afraid of them. Instead, she seemed very interested in their capabilities to be used in medicine. That being an avenue Shino had never considered, he was quite interested, also. Sparring with Hinata was slow. She was too afraid, too timid, too used to being considered lesser. But Ino was slowly cracking the code that made up Hinata. Positive reinforcement went a long way, much as it did with Koji. Ino did remember from the academy that Hinata had near-perfect chakra control. She always came only a couple of points under Ino and Sakura on the tests. The gentle fist technique her clan uses lend well to her control, allowing her to make strategic, precise hits. When Hinata hit Ino's arm, making it numb from the elbow down, it was her precise control that aided that. Then the girl nearly cried when Ino looked down at her arm, shocked. She kept apologizing, hands over her face, while Ino tried to console her. It took Sakura, Shino, and Ino, but they eventually got Hinata to see she did no harm and it was all part of sparring. A multitude of new information to sort through running through his mind, Sasuke was pleasantly sore all over. Lee kept his word, showing Sasuke the tips and tricks to gaining superhuman speed. Sasuke's eyes ached with overuse of the Sharingan, but he took in everything Lee did. More practice, and maybe the purchase of some ankle weights, and Sasuke would get there. Lee, on the other hand, was beginning to learn a whole new fighting style. As with any taijutsu, Lee picked Uchiha style easily, incorporating it into his skill set like it had always been there. What little Sasuke had time to teach him had already made Lee more deadly. As with any group of friends, there was a lot of reaching onto others' plates, sharing food, and throwing straw paper. Somehow Naruto got seated beside Hinata, who spent the entire evening with a blush all over her face that deepened every time Naruto spoke to her. Sakura was smiling at Tenten, talking about swords and weapons animatedly. Under the table, Ino linked their hands together as she chided Kiba for eating with his mouth open. Across from Naruto, Sasuke was spearing half of a grilled tomato off of the blonde's plate. Instead of yelling, Naruto just threw the other half on Sasuke's plate, wrinkling his nose up as Sasuke bit into it. The boys had their legs stretched out, feet tangled under the table. It was dark by the time the group parted. They lingered in front of the building, talking and saying good night. Even though they lived in the opposite direction, both Shino and Kiba walked Hinata home. The girl was still afraid of her cousin, which no one who knew the situation actually blamed her. They were a great buffer between the two Hyuga. Sakura laced her fingers with Ino's, pulling the girl home. They were complaining of being sore, fighting over who was taking a shower first. Kiba yelled back they should just shower together, which prompted Ino to throw a kunao at him. The boys were yawning by the time they reached the path to their house. They trudged through the yard, legs heavy, and barely stayed awake through their showers. Naruto's bed was closer to the bathroom, and they both collapsed in there, snoring. Kakashi did his nightly routine, making sure everything was secure, before heading off to bed himself. All in all, it was a great day. The kids didn't have many more of those. The Chunin exams were close. Orochimaru would test Sasuke's resolve, and Gaara would test Naruto's. Sakura's coming-of-age moment had already happened. Kakashi wondered what the Chunin exams held for her. When morning came, Itaka felt a lot better. He felt able to travel. Tsunade gave him one last look over before nodding her head, letting him go. Her apprentice, Shizune, kept whispering in her ear, wondering why the Chunin was letting them go. Itaka wondered quite the same. He was expecting some Konoha Umbu waiting outside. There were none there. Instead, Tsunade stood in front of the inn, watching them leave on the main road, an intense look on her face. Why did she leave us go? Kisame wondered out loud once they exited the village. She should have attacked us. She's a Chunin, she could have killed us. The huge wrapped sword shuddered, sensing something the two couldn't see. What, Same Hada? What do you feel? Then both men felt it as well. Zetsu was coming. It emerged from a tree, a creepy smile beckoning them over. The boss would like to see you. As the white side talked, the black side gave a creepy laugh. He has some questions. He'd waited until Zetsu merged with the tree and his chakra faded away before Kisame cursed. He knows, doesn't he? I should have known that creepy thing was hiding nearby. The sword, once all fluffed up and agitated, became calm and quiet. No. It wasn't around. Same Hada would have reacted. Kisame tilted his head, considering Itaka's words. This is something else. They were roughly 3 days away from the base, more if Kisame took it easy on Itaki and traveled slow. Something was tugging at him, bothering him. Something about Obito pulling them back wasn't quite making sense. They weren't done with their mission. The information Kisame got was only part 1. This meant Obito was interrupting the mission, and that never happens. What changed? Back at the inn, with her honey eyes narrowed down, Tsunade tried to figure out why she let the two go. Why she felt as if Itaka told her the truth. He looked as if he was tired. Tired of fighting, tired of running, tired of dealing with what he'd done. Shizune must think she's crazy, and maybe Tsunade was, but she just felt as if he was done with being the bad guy. She couldn't help but feel like there is more to the teen than meets the eye. Shizune, I think it's time we head back to Konoha. Tsunade turned around, catching the shocked look on her apprentice's face. Something is going on. I want to know what it is. Ignoring the look, Tsunade continued to get her things together. She had a week before she saw Konoha's gates, and she wanted to get going. Lady Tsunade. Clutching Tun-Tun to her chest, Shizune jugged to catch up. Shouldn't we send a message? Warn Sandaime about what you know. The information would get there sooner. Sandaime could get a head start on whatever plan he put into motion. Tsunade shook her head. I need to think, Shizune. I'll think on the road. No message needs to be sent right now. There was something gnawing at her mind. Something Itaka said to her, about the Akatsuki changing hands, being under new management. If the leader changed, did that mean the principals changed, too? Oh, what kind of shit show did Tsunade stumble into? Something was brushing against Kakashi's nose. Something soft, furry, and small. Kakashi's eyes cracked open to see their little weasel friend staring back. It had been nearly 2 weeks since the last time he'd heard from Itaka. Sasuke, although trying to consume himself with training, was getting antsy, getting worried. The last letter was concerning. Itaka had told him about meeting Tsunade, about being healed. He told Kakashi that Tsunade may be on her way to Konoha. 2 weeks later, and she still hadn't arrived, to his knowledge. Hopefully, this letter would be better, be happier. The weasel, who Itaka had written was named Tadao, made a trilling noise, snuggling against Kakashi's neck. He usually finds Sasuke first. He must have been told to come to Kakashi this time. All right, little one. Sit up. Let's see what you have for me. The glowing seal on the weasel's belly was bright in the dim room. With a slight bump of chakra, a letter popped into his hand. Only one. Sasuke won't be happy, will he? The weasel nipped at Kakashi's fingers. Yes, I'll get you some food. Come on. While Tadao munched on meat scraps, Kakashi sat down at the table and unfolded the letter. Itachi had precise, straight handwriting. Done with perfection like everything else he did. This letter seemed hurried, less precise. Kakashi. Nagato held a meeting today. He wants to begin finding and capturing Jinchuriki. They want to get Kyuubi before Naruto learns how to control the power. I'm not sure when, but it will be soon. We do have some luck on our side, however. They are sending Kisame and me for the capture. That was Obito's idea, strangely enough. You had asked me why Obito was running Akatsuki from the shadows, but I think the answer lies with you. He made a comment once, one that didn't make sense to me. He said taking Naruto and Sasuke from you will finally make you realize what you did to him. I'm going to assume you know what he's talking about better than I do. There are rumors running around about the Chunin exams being held in Konoha soon. I'm assuming you are submitting the kids. I wish there was a way I could be there for him. You've made my brother strong. Please tell him there will be a crow coming in later. I should tell you that the crows will be bringing letters that lack critical information. Obito has made it his business to read them before I send them. Tadao will continue to bring you the important letters. Thank you for keeping Sasuke safe. You've done more for him than I ever have. Itachi. Kakashi laid the letter on the table, rubbing his hands over his face. There was a lot to unpack, a lot to process. Itachi figuring out there was something more to Obito's motivation happened quickly. Sadly, Obito would have to wait just a little longer. The most pressing matter in this letter, however, was the chance that Itachi and Kisame could come to the village earlier. Kakashi just had to brace himself for change and learn to adapt. It's all he could do at this point. Deciding that going back to sleep was not going to happen, Kakashi stood up to make coffee. As he waited for the hot water, he heard footsteps sounding from the hallway. The weasel, who was previously too busy eating to look away from the bowl, skittered across the counter and right up Sasuke's pale arm as he rounded the corner. Oh. Hey Tadao. The boy's hair was standing on end, looking as if he spent the entire night in one position. His pajamas were rumpled, one side of his shirt hanging crooked on his shoulder. As Sasuke scratched the weasel behind the ears, he yawned. Did Itachi send a letter? Kakashi motioned toward the table where the letter was laying. You're getting one later. This one looks like it was sent in a hurry. There was no sense in trying to hide anything from the kids. He trained them too well, they knew how to read him, they all knew too much. Pouring himself a cup of fresh coffee, Kakashi sat down beside Sasuke. He watched the boy's dark eyes skimming over the paper while Tadao trilled and purred against his neck. He's supposed to take Naruto. Sasuke's eyes met Kakashi's. They want the Kyuubi? For what? The cup clicked against the tabletop. What does every bad person want? Power, Sasuke. The Baijuyu are beings of pure chakra. They are pure, raw power. In the academy, we were taught that the first Hokage gave the other lands their Baijuyu to stop the fighting. Was that not right? Was it just to gain strength? With his free hand, Kakashi reached over and gripped Sasuke's arm. There is a difference between power and strength, Sasuke. It's something you must figure out for yourself. In a flurry, Naruto slid out around the corner, eyes wild. I got it. I'm a genius. He ran toward the table, grabbing a pen and paper as he went. Feverishly, Naruto began drawing runes and symbols all over the paper, linking them together with lines and poles and planes. With a pink tongue poking between his lips, Naruto continued writing until the page was full of black ink. Okay, yeah, so, maybe just, and, yeah. He turned the paper around, showing Sasuke and Kakashi the mess of ink on the paper. Hiration. Or, well, my version of it. Maybe. I hope. When both males looked back at him, clearly confused, Naruto rolled his eyes. Okay. So, Tenten uses time-space seals in her tool scrolls, which is totally badass, by the way. When she explained why, it made a lot of sense. They are frozen in time, meaning they keep the momentum, right? And then when she activates it, they are summoned to the field at full speed. Well, the same could happen to a human, just with a little tweak. Naruto, slow down. We aren't quite following. Kakashi sat his cup down, giving the boy his full attention. Did Naruto seriously crack Hiraishin in a dream? Grabbing another piece of paper off the counter, where a supply was always kept at the ready, Naruto began drawing out his thought process. Summoning tools is different than summoning something living. But, it can happen. Sensei, you do it every time you summon Pakun. He exists somewhere, then when you call on him, he appears with you. The same could be said for Dad. The formula he puts on people just summons him there. He exists wherever he is. When he calls on the formula, he summons himself there. The boy pointed back at his first seal. Inside this seal is me. Whatever formula I link it to, I can put on anything. Then, by focusing on that formula, I can summon myself there. Then I can be in two places at the same time. They just stared at him, mouths open. Kakashi didn't understand how Tenten's time-space seals correlated with Hiraishin, but leave it to his unpredictable blonde to dream about it. Naruto. Just let me, he rubbed at his temples. Okay. You dreamed how to finish this. Naruto nodded. And the answer is summoning yourself. Exactly. Naruto got onto his knees on the chair, leaning over the table. I can exist in two places at once. Like stepping through a door. Now I just need to come up with a formula that is unique to me. Reaching over, Sasuke grabbed the sheet of paper and the pen. He jostled Tadao, who hopped on the table before crawling up Kakashi's arm. I have a great idea for a formula. In careful handwriting, Sasuke wrote the kanji for idiot before sliding it back. In one swift movement, Naruto jumped on Sasuke, pushing the chair over and sending both boys sliding across the floor. Leaving the boys to their impromptu wrestling session, Kakashi started breakfast. His mind was whirling, not just because of Naruto's random bout of genius, but from what Itaki had written him. There was a lot to unpack and process, and it was very early in the morning. Sadly, Kakashi didn't know if Naruto would have enough time to properly learn Hiraishin with the exams quickly approaching. Speaking of that, Kakashi had to turn in the kids' application forms. He wasn't in a hurry to see Hiruzen again, which is, sadly, who Kakashi would be handing the forms to. There was a thud on the floor, followed by Naruto cursing at Sasuke. Kakashi peered over, seeing Naruto cradling his elbow while Sasuke snickered. He shook his head fondly and smiled, going back to making breakfast while Tadao trilled and nibbled at his ear. Oh, how strange his life had become. A large, wooden body scraped over Tenchi Bridge. It was the meeting time for Sasori and Kabuto. The puppeteer used these meetings as a way to keep tabs on his eccentric ex-partner. The seal he'd placed on Kabuto long ago was still holding strong and was slowly paying off. The amount of information Sasori had gained was priceless. A figure emerged from the trees, cloak blowing in the wind and hood pulled down over his eyes. Slowly, they walked forward, meeting Sasori halfway on the bridge. Kabuto. Sasori greeted the man. He hated being kept waiting, and Kabuto was right on time today. The medic pulled his hood down, the wind blowing his ponytail. Hello, Sasori. I don't have a lot of time, today. Something big is happening. That made Sasori stand at attention. Go on. When the meeting was over, and Kabuto had walked away, Sasori went back to base. He needed to find Nagato. Something big was happening, indeed. It could set their plans forward by years. Sooner was always a good thing. Sasori hated waiting. Check the description for the links to the author.